Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. All right, guys, this is Scott Groves with On the Edge podcast, and I can't even get words out of my mouth because we're going to be in for a wild ride. I have my good friend G here, and G is like one of those guys who you talk to and you're like, oh, you're just the most interesting man in the world, because he was born and raised in a cult, which we may or may not get to that. He used to be a personal trainer. Now he's a top producing loan officer. He went by the handle Blumgum on YouTube, where he had a huge following of people just watching him do and eat weird things. And yeah, he's just all around badass black guy. So his words, not mine. So hey, why don't we start there, G? Like you happen to be black, I happen to be white. That's how we're supposed to see the whole world now. Like, how are we even friends, man?
Well, you know, I think we meet in a. Thank you for that. We meet in the middle of the cynicism realm, because I don't know. I think I like to look at things from a very just logical perspective, and I like to make fun of them as well if they're wrong. Like if someone's clearly wrong or being, they're leaning towards self-prejudice, they're right because of the way that they feel or how they grew up. I like to make fun of them. It doesn't matter what they look like.
G will make fun of everybody, which is the best thing of hanging around with them, because you're big and thick and scary, and you like to make fun of everybody, so no one messes with you. It's great.
Well, but I'm also not mean-spirited about it.
Not at all.
I just want to push your buttons a little bit, and, I'm super self-deprecating, so I feel like I should deprecate everyone else. Meanwhile, deprecate, not the other
defecate.
one with the thank you.
I know what you were thinking. I know where that was going real fast. So you've been down in San Diego in a beautiful condo overlooking the Padres Stadium for about a year now in COVID. I told you you're getting a little thicker. Might be time to get back to CrossFit, but tell me what the last year has looked like for you being stuck in that fucking apartment.
All right. So I actually prefer the term girthy, just because I don't know. I mean, yeah, thicker for sure. But I tend to think of myself as like this warrior who just has had too many beers recently. And if I hit the gym, it'll just come off within the first month, which I know will not happen. But
the older you get, man, the harder that shit is to make it peel off.
Well, to me, I don't think it's getting rid of it. I think it's actually getting in there, feeling motivated to go down. And I have a gym in the condo. So, and they just took off the limit. For the longest time, there was a limit of, I think it was 5 or 6 people. You would never see that many people in, but people would put their names on the list and take up spots. And I'm like, I don't. What's the fucking swear factor on this thing?
You can say whatever you want. I don't care.
All right, cool. Anyway, the bottom line is now you can have 10 people, and you don't have to go on a list. So it's even easier for me to go to the gym. It's free. It's actually a pretty solid gym for a condo, and I just refuse to go in there. I wake up and I'm like, I've actually gotten really good at making coffee. And I've never made coffee in my life prior to COVID, but now I've got like fancy beans. I've got a pour over. What do you call that?
I don't know shit about coffee, but it is funny that you're officially an old man. Like, I make my coffee and I read the Wall Street Journal every morning.
Hell no. Who said I could read? That's stereotypical. I'm very good at reading, first of all, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of like humbles you, because when you have to stay inside all the time, and I don't know where people are listening to this podcast from, but, California has been the most aggressively stay-at-home state, in my opinion, in the entire nation. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Us in Michigan have just done some real draconian stuff. Because I know for a while I tried to come down to San Diego to hang out, and it was like, from day to day, you could go to have a cigar, you couldn't have a cigar. You could sit outside, you had to put your mask on in between puffs of cigar. Like, and all of it's just bullshit. It's all just bullshit. I want people to be safe. I want them to be healthy. I want them to do whatever they need to do to feel good about themselves. But the idea that somehow you and I were going to get COVID sitting outside smoking a cigar because we didn't put a mask on in between puffs, I mean, it's 80 degrees and sunny in San Diego all the time. Like
Mhm.
COVID doesn't live in the sun, so we're okay. It's great. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. So, what's it been like for you? Because I know you relocated down there. You don't know a ton of people in San Diego.
Yeah.
You know, it worked for you, luckily, because your job you can work from home. But
Yeah.
has it been rough?
Well, I mean, I would say if I was really to boil it down and give you the non PR response, I would say it's been a little tough because, I tend to be kind of a social person and I like to deal with people physically, face to face. And I have a job where, I'm taking anywhere from, 6 very long to 18 very short conversations a day over the phone. And yeah, I like to talk, as you can tell. But I like to also look people in the eye. And I feel like that's like my superpower over people is I have it. And it does come from the Colts. I think eye contact is super important. And it does have to do with some of the communication drills that I would do in the old brainwashing thing. But it's been tough to the degree that I haven't been able to interact with people as much as I wanted to in person. And when you do, and you guys both have your masks on, they're all weird about it. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be weird. I know that I don't look like your typical condo person in here because I shit you not, I get the cops called to me in my own condo.
Yeah, that's when you posted that, I was like, oh God, this is so fucked up.
It's fucked up.
So tell us the story about you walking around your own condo and then getting the cops called on you.
So there was
and let's just preface this, by the way, for anybody that's not watching on YouTube who's listening to the podcast. You're effectively like a bigger, buffer version of Mr. T. So you're a little thick. You're a big black dude. I can understand how some little woman who has preconceived notions about who you might be a little scared. But you're also the most happy, smiling, gregarious guy that I know. So how do you, of all people, get the cops called on you in your own condo project? This is so fucked up.
So the condo that I'm in is in like a giant, got a courtyard in the middle and it's got separate buildings and they're different heights and sizes. So you have a really tall one, which from the roof, you can watch a Padres game. You have another one that's like townhomes and then 2 right next to each other, which are like 1 and 2 bedroom condos. I mean, they're all nice-ish, but it has a giant courtyard in the middle. So there was a girl coming over to my house, and she was, I have a little button to open the gate for her to come in. So I'm just sitting in the courtyard waiting because, why would I wait outside on the street where the bums are? Surprising amount of bum population in San Diego.
Huge homeless population. We'll get to that. But
yeah.
This is better.
So I mean, I'm wearing like a very expensive hoodie. So it's a nice hoodie and it's black. Unfortunately, it just happens to be black. And I was wearing, I think, like some black pants and some shoes, and I was just kind of like traipsing around the little courtyard area. It was I would say it's about a third of a football field in size. And security comes out. And they come out like with force. Like they're coming out like looking. And they look at me. And it was funny because I was thinking to myself like, oh, they can't see me because it's nighttime. Honestly, they were looking right at me for a period of like, I want to say like 3-4 seconds. And then they saw me and they're like, oh, it's you. And I was like, it's me? What do you mean? Yeah, someone called security and said there was a homeless black guy in the courtyard trying to break in. And like the story was already made up. Right. They're trying to break into places. And, I find that interesting because I feel like that must happen in real life. People must have to justify the intentions of what they think the person was doing, even though it didn't necessarily even happen that way. But to create efficacy in the response of security or police or whatever it is. But I mean, I was sitting for 98% of the time. So like, how could I have been just that part? It bothered me more than the fact that I am not new to people feeling, I think, intimidated by me. Ever since I was knee high to a duck, old ladies would cross the street when they saw me walking down, and I'm like, oh my God, are you for real? But just the fact that she added on that extra bit that I was like trying to break into some shit. And I'm like,
so homeowners associations in condo projects are notorious for having one or two Karens. And God bless all the nice people that are named Karen, because they just got fucked. I feel so bad for them.
I know.
But every HOA has like that Karen who's just looking for an excuse to involve security or the cops or whatever. Let me ask you this. Do you think that same nosy neighbor, if it's Scott, who, you know, I'm white, maybe like a quarter Mexican. I don't know. I'm kind of like a white trash. I'm a white trash mutt of different Hispanic and Caucasian origin. We're not quite sure. Grandfathers disappeared at one time. So if it's me in the black hoodie and the black pants, just kind of walking around, like not looking like I have much direction, do you think that same lady calls the cops on me, or do you think it's just because you're black?
Absolutely, because I'm black.
That sucks. I hate to hear that.
Because
I believe you, and I hate to hear that.
I mean, you're talking about San Diego. How many partially Mexican professionals do you think there are down there? And that's what you look like. Professional, I think, is a bit of a no, but like you totally look like you would fit in San Diego. Could be from the area. You know, maybe your parents call that interracialized.
Yes,
is that too extreme?
I don't know if that's the right term, but I like it.
It's but yeah, I mean, I totally think it's because I'm black. Because and I'm not that I'm like truly offended by it. I mean, I'm kind of like put off by it,
right?
But I could give a shit. I'm not. I think I've talked about this with you before. I do not. It's not that I don't believe racism still exists. I just don't understand why racism still exists, or preconceived notions that someone, because of the color of their skin, is a certain way. There's fucked up versions of everybody, even the rich white motherfuckers. I'm just saying that. And look, listen, guys, for the mainstay of my life, loved white girls. And I still do, but I'm trying to dabble out and, you know, explore other, you know, get exotic and stuff. But, you know, I've definitely dealt with a large number of white dads who, you know, have like a raised eyebrow when they first meet me. But then when they find out, oh, I'm actually kind of like a pretty normal, but most importantly, funny guy who could probably kick their ass, they lighten up a little bit. But I'm not an aggressive person. And, you know, it's sad to me that the dregs of racism have spilled over into the modern day and are still accepted. You know, like, there's one thing, and I like to draw a distinction. There's a difference between someone who is truly racist and does not like certain people because of their color, and then there are people who were raised racist. And the little old white lady calls people Negroes because, you know, she has been for the last 82 years. So I wouldn't consider that racism. And that's the type of racism that I mean, again, it's not racism. That's the type of hangovers from past generations that are going to die off soon. So racism, hopefully, I think a portion of that will decrease, and already has to many degrees, almost to a fault. Like when you get these people who are like hardcore Black Lives Matter people, and, you know, they fight for the strife of the people. I actually have an assignment for you. You need to watch I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. And everyone on here needs to watch I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, because Keenen Ivory Wayans, In Living Color, etc., have been making fun of the plight of Black people since the 80s. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people, I'm definitely on a tangent right now. But
keep going.
I feel like a lot of people should watch In Living Color, because they make fun of the concept of racism and interactions between people of different colors. If you guys didn't know, that's where Jennifer Lopez got famous. She was a dancing girl. But and not like in like a stripper type way. But they had like this dance crew would come out.
Yeah, I remember. What were they called?
Fly Girls.
The Fly Girls. That's what it was. The Fly Girls dancing on the fake rooftop.
Yeah.
I remember that in the 80s.
Well, they were dancing on the stage. They were dancing all over. But
yeah,
that booty was fat from the get. Holy shit.
Can I tell the Sushi Stop story?
Oh yeah, of course.
All right, sweet. So this is the Sushi Stop story, and this is why I can appreciate G, because he will talk openly about these things right in front of people, and or he'll just address them up front. So G and I go to this place called Sushi Stop in Pasadena. And sorry, I just called out the people at Sushi Stop in Pasadena, but it is what it is. And I swear to God, I've been going in there because we used to work in Pasadena. I've been going in there once a week for a year and a half, 2 years. And I walk in with you when you first got hired and we were working together. And the lady behind the counter, she's like, "How you pay?" And I'm like, and like, I didn't really understand because it's kind of loud in there and it's small and her English was a little bit broken. So I had to ask like 3 times. And she was like, "How you pay?" And I was like, What the fuck do you mean how I pay? I'm going to pay with my Platinum American Express like I do every week when I come in here with some client or some coworker. And then I looked and I'm like, oh, it's because G's with me and she thinks we're going to run out on the bill because I'm with a black guy.
Right.
And I'm like, that's the most prejudiced shit ever. And then you and I had a conversation about it where you're like, yeah, that's fucked up that I have to deal with that. And I don't think that Japanese lady grew up a raving racist hating blacks. She probably has the experience at her restaurant that a larger proportion of people that have run out on the bill happen to be black. So it's like, well, the new modern term is lived experience.
Right.
I fucking hate that G has to deal with that lived experience of he walks into a restaurant and somebody questions whether or not he's going to pay his bill. And I hate that business owner might have a disproportionate number of people who happen to be black who run out on the bill. And I'm like, the whole thing is fucked up, dude. How are we going to fix this? And so what you and I did was we ate, $200 worth of sushi, which is really hard at that place. Yeah, and then we tipped well and we showed them that we can pay the bill and hopefully started changing some impressions. But I know you got to deal with that shit all the time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's specific to note that didn't she ask us before we ordered?
Yeah, as we were sitting down, she was like, "How you pay?"
Yeah, which is not something anyone ever expects to be asked right off the jump. Like, bitch, I'm gonna pay however I'm gonna pay. You shouldn't be asking me that. Unfortunately,
not at all.
Cash is legal tender, but so are credit cards. So is Apple Pay. Like, come on. And you know what? To be honest, what you just said, where we went beast mode on the sushi and over tipped. That's actually something I've been doing for a very long time to fight the stereotype that black people don't tip, which I don't know if you guys know if that exists, but there was a portion of time in my life when I was 21 where I moved to Hawaii. I lived there for 4 years. It was a very good experience for me.
You were a bouncer, right?
Yeah. I was a bouncer for about a year at a place called Moose McGillicuddy's, which is a very well-known military bar. Not in that it was like on a base, but that's what, and this is in 2005, mind you. So the war in Iraq is firing right now.
We're at the height of raw patriotism,
100%,
and just everybody in the military is deployed to either Iraq or Afghanistan,
right?
Coming back. So when they come back to Hawaii from a 10-month deployment, they're probably ready to party and get it on.
They are definitely looking to go beast mode.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that a lot of people don't know about Hawaii, is that white people aren't particularly liked over there. It's probably the most racist state I've ever been to that was not racist towards black people. And
yeah, you look a little Samoan than you do like skinny white boy.
I believe they classified me as Tongan.
Tongan? Okay.
Yeah, they thought I was half black, half Tongan, which my mom is actually from Cuba. My dad's Filipino and black, a little bit of American Indian. So I do kind of have like that mutt local look. Kind of like you can fit into a large array of classifications.
Right.
White, Mexican, Middle Eastern.
Dude, when I went to Israel, whoever I ran into just spoke to me in their native language because I was a little bit tan.
Yeah.
I had curly hair and a beard. So like if I was hanging out with the Israelis, they started talking to me in Hebrew. If I was hanging out on like the, in the Bethlehem side, all the Palestinians, I guess, anybody Arabic started just talking to me in their native language. I was like, oh, this is cool, dude. Like, if I actually knew how to speak some languages, I could have been a spy.
Yeah,
exactly.
Bro.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, fuck, I fit in. So anyway, Hawaii, you living in Hawaii. What was the experience like there?
Well, first of all, I loved it. It was a very important time in my life because I had just left working for the cult that I was at. I was 21 years old. I didn't know anyone. I had no money. I had like $1,000 and I knew nobody. So this is where I developed a very specific skill, which will come into play here in regards to me moving to San Diego. I run solo all the time. And I prefer it, actually. I don't need any kind of like people to go anywhere with me. I just kind of go wherever I go and I'll chat up whoever's there. And I try to change their perspective because I can feel the way people see me. When they first see me, their first impression is like what the fuck is this guy doing here? And it's okay though, because I love the process of the arrival where the eyes are wide and then I'm going to be the one to initiate the conversation. And then on top of that, maybe I have something to talk about and then we'll have some sort of basic agreement on whatever the fuck, how's the weather type shit in the conversation. And then also I'm going to patronize the business and then I'm going to overtip by at least 10 to 15%, which I don't think you liked when I was working for you because I definitely took it. Anyway, like I'll tip on average 30%. If it's really good, I'll tip 100%. If it's really good and I think the girl's cute, I'll just
go crazy.
The sky's the limit now.
Yeah, and to be clear, I was trying to talk you into saving some more of your money and getting a better financial situation, which I know now you're in an awesome financial situation. But yeah, that's where the tipping thing. I was like, hey, dude, just you don't have to give it all away as soon as you make it. That's the loan officer curse, right? We start making money, we start spending money. That's every loan officer I've ever met in my entire life.
It's true, but you know, not to segue off of Hawaii, but you know, I definitely have got my shit under control and paid off all my debt and awesome have reserves. And I also have enough to separate from my savings to buy my first property, which is not bad for a year's work.
Yeah.
You know, so
but let's be clear, man, it's not a year's work. You put in a lot of time. It's like all those people are like, people think they're an overnight success. It's like, no, man, they had 10, 15 years of building different skill sets and learning to talk to different people. And then, you know, you just merged your skills with the right opportunity and then surprise, surprise, fucking crush it. But I definitely want to get back to Hawaii, but since you segued to Pasadena, I do remember I lived in Pasadena on and off for 20 years since I got out of the Army. And I knew like 2 people in Pasadena. You and I would go out for a beer after you working there for a year, and you were like the fucking mayor of Pasadena. Like this old dude over here would come over, hey, G, when are we gonna play pool again? And then this lady over here had been like, no, you gotta swing by the bar to have a drink. And you're just like, to your point, you roll solo, and then you just make friends wherever you go, which is, I can be friendly or interesting, but or interested or interesting, it doesn't matter. But my first inclination is not to talk to strangers. Like, I'm not going to go into a bar, just kind of like weave my way into a game of pool with 4 guys that have clearly known each other for 20 years and be like, what's up, guys? We're going to play some pool. I'm like, what the fuck, man? This is uncomfortable. I don't like talking to new people.
So I can see it in your hands.
Yeah, I just can't. That's weird. That's awkward. Like, I don't like to do that. And G's just like, walk up to anybody like, let's be best friends.
Well, let me just say that I think communication is very important. And I think it's, when wielded properly, can either get you something or destroy something for you if you approach it in the wrong way. So, also, I just really like to be the center of attention. I mean, it's like it started as an egotistical thing until I figured out, oh, maybe I might have a little bit of a silver tongue when it comes to like artfully inserting myself into scenarios where I don't exist prior, and then taking over it. So it's kind of like a mental dominance type of thing. I wouldn't say it's all good. I'm satisfying my own personal craving to take over the conversation. Not necessarily to push everyone out, but I don't know. I'm just super social. I want to be in the mix with everyone.
So something good came from the cult. At least you can talk to people at their level or any level.
I think multiple things, even more than that, came from it. You know, the specific cult. I've had a lot of time to think about it. So
and just for context, tell people you were born in the cult, like literally born.
Yeah.
And then when did you leave the cult?
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to specify, was the timeline. So okay, so some people may not call this a cult, okay? I would. I was born into something called Sea Organization. Let me rephrase that. The Sea Organization. Okay? Sea is in the ocean, not as in the letter. It is the clergy of the Church of right? That's the best way that I can describe it, is the separated group where they're very specifically chosen. There's actually like quotes like many are called, few are chosen. Like that's plagiarized for sure. But it's, you know, because they have staff members who are not Sea Org members, and they don't have such rigid qualifications. They can go home to their families, whereas the Sea Organization, now they are birthed and fed and everything by the church. Make $50 a week. It might have gone up to $100 a week at this point. But yes, I was born into this in the headquarters in Clearwater, Florida. So I wasn't actually born at the Flagland base. I was born at one of the berthings called the Quality Inn. And it was legit a Quality Inn hotel that they bought out and then turned into rooms where people would sleep. And I was born in one of those rooms to a midwife. One of the early, you know, I was there until I was, I don't know, I want to say 4. And then there's a major center, obviously, in Florida, and a huge, very well-known major one in Los Angeles. And my parents hopped back and forth between the two for quite a while. I actually think I might have had like mental problems as a kid because a lot of it I've either forgotten or don't remember because it was a very tough time in my life. And I didn't like, first of all, being moved around. Second of all, I wasn't like really raised by my parents. We were kind of like, they would see us maybe once or twice, you know, once a day or once every couple days, because they would be working incessantly doing whatever they call them posts, whatever their jobs were. And so, you know, we kind of would just round it into a room and were raised by nannies. The one when I was a little kid, her name was Teresa. I never forgot her. And I saw her later on in life. She had a liking of me because my name is Guillaume, which is an extremely French name. A lot of people ask me why I was named Guillaume, and I've actually made up a version, but I'll tell you the real version. You know, what I tend to tell people, because I do calls, they're like, Neil?
Yeah.
Nathan?
When you're on your call center job, they're like, they think you're in India coming up with a fake name or something.
100%.
Yeah.
They do not understand. And I think it might have something to do with the way that I enunciate my name. Thank you for calling. My name is Guillaume. And when they hear it, there's just so many fucked up versions that they hear in their head that I think they hear it and they're like, no, that's not an actual sound. What is that sound that he just made? So, and they're like, oh, Guillaume. Finally, after I explain it to them, I just say it's French for William. What is that? I say, well, you know, I think my mom wanted to ruin middle school and she failed because it just made me funny. And then they have that cheap laugh and I use that joke on it.
Boy named Sue or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So the thing is, the executive director of the church, his name was Guillaume. And that's who they named me after. They also gave me like a real fucked up middle name, which I'm not going to tell you, but it's like, I don't know what their reasoning was behind naming me all these names. And then they gave my brother a name like Terrell. Like, come on. You're going to give him the fucking basic black name and then give me a name that is going to befuddle tongues for the next 18 years.
I love that it's Guillaume and Terrell. I didn't know that about your brother. That's a trip, man. Yeah. What I always told people is you should just tell them my name is G, but I prefer to go by Guillaume, because you always introduce yourself as Guillaume and then you're like, but you can just call me G. That's easier. I want you to fuck with people and be like, well, my real name's G, just the letter, but I want you to call me Guillaume.
I choose to have my name this way.
I identify as a Guillaume. I want to be a William.
It's my pronoun. Oh my God. So just so you guys know, Guillaume is what they called William the Conqueror when he took over Normandy. And is just as common as Bill or William in Canada, French Canada, obviously, or France, as William or Bill is in any other English-speaking country. So it's actually a very normal name in a very small 2 sections of the world. But yeah, I mean, I'm the only American one that I've met, and I've been rocking it pretty hard. It's actually gotten me laid a number of times.
You seem so worldly, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I've actually started saying it with a little bit of a face now. Nice. When I introduce myself to girls that I think are attractive, I'll say, "Oh, my name is." I lean in as a small pause and I say, Guillaume.
It's like what was that thing that we were talking about the other day?
ASMR.
ASMR. Weirdest thing. Okay. All right,
Hang on.
Hold on. We got to go to Chris. We got to go to Chris on this one because Chris knows all about this. Chris, what is ASMR? You were describing it the other night. Oh, this is good stuff.
That's not true. I don't know all about it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's like people whispering and like ambient noises to help you relax.
You guys have to cut in like a little bit of ASMR so
Yeah.
they know what you're talking about.
There's no need to worry. We have everything we need. And the powers will be back soon.
I mean, there's people on YouTube that have like hundreds of millions of views, and they're just
yeah.
like, so then I want to go to bed, and then maybe we'll just do this thing. And it's like, I'm like, is this an erotic thing? Is this a meditation thing?
But
I
they'll
saw
also,
one
like,
that was
tap.
like, hot guy is your boyfriend, and he's just like, hey, I want to cuddle with you. Let's go to bed in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's
First,
just
let's
creeping
talk.
me out, dude. It
I
feels like
don't
something
like
out of a
any
horror
of it.
movie. that would wreck my dreams.
Yes.
If I was trying to fall asleep to a guy or a girl just whispering, and like I'd be so freaked out. What are they telling me?
I would
What
just
are
be like, shut the fuck up already. Like, do you have an off button? It doesn't matter how hot you are. A girl who talks that much in a whisper,
You've been walking so much lately,
you should only date until she tries to ruin your life.
we'll let that one go.
Yeah,
All right,
there's
all
a
right.
story to that.
So how old are you now, and then how long ago did you we'll call it fall away from the church?
I turned 37 this year. I am a Scorpio, which surprisingly a lot of girls take seriously. I want to say that I partitioned myself, disconnected myself approximately. I want to say, I mean, it wasn't like an immediate thing. It wasn't just like I'm out. You know, it started, you think about it. And I want to say that happened probably in like maybe a decade ago. I started mentally disconnecting my feelings about it and kind of like starting to unwind the clock, because it's a lot of mental like nodes that you have to pull out, the agreements. And some of them you pull out too many, where you go a little off the rails and you kind of have to careen back.
Because some of the shit is really good, right? Like
Fantastic.
some of the business knowledge, some of the self-help stuff.
Totally.
I mean, even when I was a kid, I was fascinated. Well, not a kid. I was in my 20s. I was fascinated. I read Dianetics, and I'm like, part of this is crazy, and part of this is pretty smart.
Right.
But really, I find myself having arguments in defense of religion all the time. And I'm not a religious guy. But I'm like, all right, well, your guy that walked on water and like basically came up with this alien race called God is not much different than what came up with. Now, maybe the church has gone a different direction or whatever. I'm not here to judge one over the other. But like anything, you probably took away some good skills, and ripping out too many of those nodes, like you said, took you a little bit off the rails at times in your life.
For sure. I wouldn't call myself a saint by any means. And in fact, there was a point in time where I decided that I was going to go off the rails. I was going to do whatever the fuck I wanted because I was done with people telling me what to do. I mean, there's a name for it. I would liken it to being the school of hard knocks. Okay. I definitely very much grew up that way. In that religion, they call it a service facsimile, which is a very specific word and is described as a mechanism that someone uses. There's another word for it, but a mechanism that someone uses to make themselves right and others wrong. So a lot of people, in my opinion, when they grow up school of hard knocks, because they would never listen to what the old heads were telling them to do, so they would constantly do something until they fuck up, and then they would course correct. Do something, until eventually they've gotten to the same result that they could have arrived at, 20 years sooner had they been willing and able to receive input from some sort of authoritative figure.
Yeah, a mentor,
uncle,
a pastor, an uncle,
right.
God, whatever. Like there's that old saying, youth is wasted on the young, because we just, as human beings, we have to rebel and fight back and then be like, oh man, yeah, I should have listened to my uncle, or I should have saved more money, or I should have done that, or whatever.
Yes, true. I mean, I still don't think I should have listened to them. to be honest. I think that I'm happy with the journey that I made. And it makes my life worthwhile because I did it in a way that I had to do it in. I don't think that to this day, either I'm not adult enough to be able to accept what you just said, or I actually truly am happy being the way that I am and arriving at the same place in my roundabout figure eight journey when I could have just taken a straight line. You know, because nothing I do is normal, unfortunately. You know, I tend to just stick out like a sore thumb or like a nicely painted nail in most situations. So for me, it's okay. But the bottom line is it took me a while to figure out what it is that I believe, why I believe it, and how much of that syncs up with where I came from, and how much of that is a blend of maybe things that I've learned in my life or other principles that I've come across. You know, to your point, I think he has many amazing things to offer people. Okay. And even you will say this, in order for you to experience change from, they have to find what they call your ruin, but you got to have the problem first before you need the solution. So, actually, one of the things when they're like doing the stress test that you see on the street, one of them is to ruin the person. Talk to them, dig to find out what is it that they're struggling with. And then you press that button hard and you sell them the book. I used to sell the fuck out of books, bro, on Hollywood Boulevard. I think part of it might have been the fact that I was the only black person in the crew. And they're like, let me talk to the one that
looks different.
Yeah,
he looks different. Right,
exactly.
But also, let me talk to this Mr. T guy over here.
I didn't look like Mr. T back then.
Oh, dude. By the way, anybody who's listening to this should go find the Blum Gum video that you did when you were walking around City Walk as Mr. T. It's one of the better ones. It's really, really good. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your story.
I did 100% shave my head, grow out the fro, grow out the beard, and it looked like Mr. T. I'm still impressed when I see the Instagram photo. I'm like, wow, the barber hooked me up.
That's pretty good.
Crushed it. I'm happy with what I have retained. It did give me amazing communication skills. Sometimes I can be a complete shithead. But for the most part, you know, I'm very good at communication. What else did I get from that? I'm just kidding. There's more things.
I feel like, you know, we've only known each other about, I think, going on 4 or 5 years here now. And I think just your evolution from when I first met you and there was some residual whatever. I don't know I'm not a psychologist. Anger, abandonment. Who the fuck knows?
Sure.
Detachment, whatever the correct terminology is.
Yeah. From
there to where you are today, and let's be honest, a little bit of business success, a little bit of money helps. But I feel like you're so much more at peace with what happened and how things went down, and you know your current or lack thereof relationship with your family. You know, it feels like you're just in a much better place mentally, which is exciting to see just as your friend, man. So for whatever it's worth, I'm glad you're there. Can we shift gears and talk about the YouTube channel? Because the funny thing is, when we interviewed you for the job the first time, the first thing you brought up about your past that might make us look at you a little bit differently was not the cult.
Right.
The thing that you brought up, you're just like, well, I just gotta let you know before I take this job, you know, I have this YouTube channel and I've got tens of thousands of followers,
now,
and let's just say over 100,000 followers. And let's just say that the content is not very business professional friendly. And we're like, oh, is this like a porn channel or like what's going on? So we watched a few of the videos and I was just rolling on, you know, you would eat a giant softball size of wasabi and then just puke into the camera for 10 minutes and get 100,000 views or whatnot. So can you tell us, like, where did this come from where you're like, all right, I'm going to be now this anti-character Blum Gum.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do some crazy shit on the, like, I'll never forget. You went on a hike with some girl and you're like, Jesus Christ, man, this is some white people shit. Why are you guys working out for fun in the sun? This is miserable. And I'm like, okay, I think that's hilarious. I can also see how that might be offend some people. So, how did you become Blumgum?
Well, let me make the distinction. Blumgum is an emphasized character who deals in hyperbolic humor and attacks everything. Not attack, I think is the wrong word, but makes fun of everything. So it's really kind of like a drunk version of me, a super drunk version of me. But the thoughts come out, okay. And I'm not saying that I actually feel the way. There was many times where I would just say it because I knew that it would be what the character was. I mean, I just created kind of like a funny asshole. To be honest, that's what he was. That everyone's gonna laugh at some point. So 2012, January of 2012, which was when the channel started. I only worked with one other guy. He would film and edit. I was the character, and we were good friends. We had known each other for probably about a cool 10 years. And he was my boss at the time. I worked at a software company, and I ran like a marketing department. He was like the marketing, whatever, division guy. And we were watching a video on YouTube called the Cinnamon Challenge. And it's where you take a spoonful of cinnamon and you try to swallow it, and you can't because of the amount it absorbs all the saliva in your mouth.
Yeah.
So
It's actually really funny to watch somebody try to eat a tablespoon of cinnamon because they end up just effectively puking.
well, it's also really, really dangerous. I mean, that's the thing. If you swallow it through the wrong hole, through your breathing hole, if you breathe it in, the particles can actually clog up the little tiny minutia holes in your lungs, and you can suffocate. People have died from this. But yes, it is funny because only 1% of the time that happens. The other 99% of the time is hilarious and can be more or less hilarious depending on how fat, hot, weird, white, black, or whatever the person is that's doing it. Everyone has a different reaction. But, I tried it, and it was, I failed. It was a very low quality video. It was like shot on an iPhone 2 or something, like an old iPhone. And we immediately, he posted it, and we immediately had 44 subscribers in not even 24 hours. And also, I choose to believe this in my own mind, even though, I don't think so. But certain people find me handsome, which I don't understand. I mean, I kind of think I am, but at the same time, I don't. I think I'm, anyway. It's like this self-deprecating. But the bottom line is, that's what a bunch of the comments were. Oh, he's so handsome. This is back when I was fat. I was pretty fat. I was 290. I'm 260 for juxtaposition. And during the later part, or let's say the prime of Blumgum, I'd gotten down to 209.
Yeah, there's a couple pictures of you where I'm like, Jesus, man, you're like a CrossFit stud.
Yeah, I mean, certain people tend to have blessings physically, which I won't get into, okay? You can just check out the Instagram photos. But, yeah, it's that was what it was. And then we're like, holy shit, for real, it just like that? So you got to do is post a video? So we're trying to it had no name, by the way, at the time. It was just, it was just some stupid name. We didn't create the name until after that happened. And we're like, hey, let's make some stupid videos. Me and this guy, he was my boss, but we had known each other so long that, I mean, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
With me working with you. I'm always, even if you're my boss, you will always be my peer. I cannot view people as above or below me. They're just to the side.
Probably a little leftover from your early life.
Well, no. I think it's the rejection of my early life.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely echelons.
No,
there.
that's what I'm saying. It's a rejection of that
Yes.
super tiered.
Yes.
Everybody's at a different level.
Right.
Now you're just hey, we're all equal. I can't talk to
Unless
you.
we're not. Unless
Yeah.
you meet an actual piece of shit, or or
All right. So you and your boss, you're making this thing. You
Yeah.
decide to name it Blumgum.
So yeah, we somehow stumble on the name Blumgum after 10 or so variations. And then we did a saltine cracker. We try to eat a whole pack of saltines in 1 minute. Same thing, saliva absorption, etc. Until ultimately we do this one video, which kicked it off. It's called the Centurion Challenge. And basically it's a drinking challenge. And it was the first drinking challenge we did. and was where the true nature of Blum Gum arrived. Basically, you have to drink 1 shot of beer every minute for 100 minutes. Okay, tends to make people vomit, not because of the amount of beer, but because of the amount of carbonated liquid over time that fills you up with gas, and then bleh, right. So, but I was first of all drinking 2 shots, or 2.2 shot ounce. It's supposed to be just a 1.5 ounce shot. So it was effectively 1.5 times the amount, which was a huge talking point. But also, I had been drinking when we started. So I was a little bit drunk already.
And by the way, when people do this challenge, the first shot, you're like, oh, this is nothing.
Stupid. Why
And then the second, the third, like somewhere into the teens, because I've done this before in a football game back when I was in the Army, where it's like every minute on the football game, you take a shot of beer. It's like, it feels like nothing, because you can drink a 12-ounce beer or whatever. But then somewhere into like 20s or 30s, you're just looking at that next shot and you're like, I want to fucking die.
Your stomach starts to inflate and you're like, wow, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who's done a power hour, same thing, except a power hour is 60, Centurion is 100, a Spartan is 300, and there's one in between, which is 200. I've done the 200 one, but yeah, it surprisingly gets hard pretty quick, not even a third of the way through.
By the way, this is how people die, because they do something stupid and they can't stop. So did you make it to 100?
I did, yeah. And then I puked directly after. The thing is, the challenge to me was stupid. To me, it was just like another Friday night of drinking. Like doing I think I was, let's see, in 2012, I would have been
28, 29, somewhere in there.
Yeah, like 28, I think. So, I was in like my late party phase, which I don't know. I think a lot of 28-year-olds are still going hard in the paint nowadays. Would you see it? Would you say that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, you still got the juice.
Until I met my first wife, who was lovely. Until I met her, I was, I would work 50, 60, 70 hours a week at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Friday night at 6:01 p.m. till, Monday morning at 6 a.m., it was go pretty hard in the paint.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking for your wife, supposedly.
Yeah.
But it's it was just a normal night.
So just for context, you do the Centurion, you've only got a couple of videos up. YouTube obviously is not what it is today, where everybody and their brother has a podcast or a YouTube. So the market wasn't as saturated. How many videos in do you start getting some momentum where you're like, oh,
that video
Centurion
was the catalyst. So we had maybe a total of 180 views and then maybe like 60 subscribers at that time. Then immediately, the minute we post it, it gets posted to Reddit. This is like old school Reddit. It was on the front page for like 8 hours, which back in the day is insane. That's insane. It got like 80,000 views in, I don't know, 4 hours.
Yeah, which for context, people got to remember, you see a video now on YouTube and it has 1 million views and you're like, oh, that's just normal.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you get 10,000 views. That's a big deal, because I don't even know if YouTube had been bought by Google at that point yet. Or maybe it just had been bought by Google.
I think it might have.
Can you look that up, Chris? When did Google buy YouTube? Because I remember they bought it for whatever, $1 billion. I remember, this is stupid.
Right.
And now it ends up being the deal of the century. I think I did the cinnamon challenge right before I came in here. Jesus.
Yeah, it was definitely not that way back in the day. And the channel, more importantly, was like under 2 weeks old. I think it might have been a week old. So the newness of the channel to me was pretty crazy too, because you would have people with channels, they have a decent amount of content and they've been making good content, they just have never been found. And then obviously once someone's like, oh my God, this guy will show you how to change your oil on any kind of Toyota, it's obvious if it's good content, it's good content.
Right.
It's going to get picked up.
October 06.
October. Oh, so it had been owned by Google for a while, but I just remember like what YouTube is today. I remember the first video that went to 1 million views was this Brazilian girl who would do these little like quasi strip teases, and everybody's like, oh, this is the end of society that this thing exists, because you can watch this girl's booty online and 1 million degenerates have watched it. So it's like back then it was a big deal if you had, like I said, 10, 20,000 views. So
Sure.
anyway,
What's
go
the
on
name
with
of
it.
that channel.
Huh? I think that channel has since been banned. So
YouTube
anyway,
today is garbage, by the way. Sorry, YouTube. I just got to tell you, I do not agree with the fact that you ban anything that involves drinking beer. Okay, you're talking about like it's a dangerous thing. I'm sorry,
yeah, because they completely demonetized your channel, right? Like,
not the entire thing, but they've deleted. You know, I had videos, millions of views, deleted.
ugh.
So my main problem with it is the fact that they made money off you, and you helped to broaden the reach of the program, and then they shit on you and they flush you down the toilet.
Yeah.
I'm not a turd.
All right. So where do you go from there? Because I mean, I've watched the one that actually made me feel bad for you and makes me think that you're gonna die way too young is the one where you ate a whole tin of tobacco, like chew.
I'm gonna have to agree with you.
I mean, that one, when I saw that, I was like, oh, how is this dude still alive?
It was over the top. We were in kind of like a war with this other YouTuber who's very well known. He's since gone on to become like a millions and millions subscriber guy. But we were having this egg challenge with this guy. And we would do like these side challenges that were just insane. Like one of them, I started off with a slice of pizza that I doused in pepper spray and like proceeded to eat. It actually was not as bad as I thought it would be, but it was really bad. Like, why would you do that? You know, these are things that are obviously not made to be consumed, right? So we were kind of like doing one of our fringe challenges, and we were trying to come up with things that people would eat. And there'd be a lot of suggestions. You know, for instance, some of my videos have like over 30,000 comments. So if that gives you kind of an idea of how, the channel had a lot of interaction. Had I continued the channel, probably would have eventually done pretty well with it if I was not so ashamed of it. But, there was one where, people were like, no one we know can eat, like ingest a can of Copenhagen winter mint.
And by the way, I smoke, to my wife's chagrin, I smoke a lot of cigars. We're filming this at 10 o'clock in the morning, have a morning cigar. I'll probably have 2 or 3 more today. The only thing that will slow me down is I need to go to jiu-jitsu, and I don't want to smell like a chimney going into jiu-jitsu. And I'm now, sad to admit, addicted to nicotine. Like, I can feel that desire to have nicotine.
Right.
So I would say I'm a fairly large nicotine ingester. And the thought of swallowing just a plug of fucking Copenhagen, much less a whole, it's actually making my breakfast come back up right now. And
a lot of people can't even swallow their own spit, like a little bit of spit when they're chewing it.
Yeah,
That's why they
and
spit it out.
I'm gonna be sick, but we got to get through this. So I just remember you went on a baseball diamond, right? You filmed it outdoors.
Yeah,
and you ate a whole fucking can of Copenhagen.
True. True. And it was in Burbank, California, at whatever that park is up. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. And we would always do like these silly intros where I was showing off my inability to hit a baseball. And then we jumped right into it, and I'm like, I'm going to eat a
Which,
whole...
by the way, the fact that you're like a third Puerto Rican, a third Cuban, a third black, and you can't hit a baseball, I know this is the most stereotypical, prejudiced thing to say, but how can you not hit a baseball, bro?
I can hit a baseball. It was a joke.
Oh, okay.
It's self-deprecating humor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't hit the baseball, and then you have to swallow a can of Copenhagen.
Yeah, right. And I opened it up, and the minute it hit, because I used to smoke like pretty heavily, unfortunately. I've tried chew when I couldn't have a cigarette, and it not chew. They keep telling me it's not chew, dip, I guess.
Dip, yeah.
So like I put it in my lip, and it was like my gums were on fire. How can someone eat this? So the minute it hit my tongue, because I just basically opened it and just took the whole thing, and I could immediately feel like the roof of my mouth, the tongue, the uvula, that little punching bag thing, look in the back of your mouth, was on fire. And it was just so much bigger than I thought it was gonna be in my mouth, or chewing like this, and I kept trying to swallow it, and it just wouldn't happen. So I had to grab a bottle of water. And I just swish it back, and like in one fell swoop, it was just like, and I was like, oh my god. And I remember looking around, and I don't know if any of your viewers have ever done mushrooms. I'm not saying I've done mushrooms, guys, but everything became bright. Like, I thought I was actually gonna had made a grave mistake because
yes, you did make a grave mistake.
I'm telling you, the park, it's a nice park, but it became the most beautiful park in the world because the colors were on point. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie Dredd, like the remake of Judge Dredd, where when they take the drugs, it's like this crystallized, beautiful world. That's what it was like, except my throat was on fire.
And how long before you start vomiting? Because the rest of that video is just like a 10-minute compilation of you trying to puke it up.
Yeah,
like you're basically trying to pump your own stomach.
Yeah, I could not puke for approximately 45 minutes. And I actually had to down like 4 liters, 2 liters of water in order for there to be like something to puke up, because I kept, and I have a pretty good control over my puke factor. I mean, a lot of my videos, unfortunately, people like to watch people puke, and some of the stuff that I would do would just cause puking. So, but anyone who's, touched the back of their tongue, if you got to get it out, there's ways to do that.
Right.
In this case, I was unable to, and my body was like freaking out for a whole 45 minutes. And then what came up had to be maybe like a third. It's probably still in me. And I agree with you. I'm probably going to die from it. But
I mean, God forbid, I hope this doesn't happen, but if you ever get some weird intestinal problems or some weird fucking anal cancer or something, it's going to be from that fucking lump of Copenhagen just working its
they
way
call
through
it
the
colon
system.
cancer, right?
Colon cancer, whatever.
And a lot of people die from it. Anyway, but yeah.
I like anal cancer better. It sounds a little bit more aggressive.
Wow.
So I hope to God that you're healthy for the rest of your life and live a very long, prosperous life. But if I ever hear something goes wrong with you, I'm just gonna be like, yeah, it was the Copenhagen,
Yeah.
obviously. Because drinking a gallon of milk, which I think you did that one twice, yeah.
Yeah.
Drinking a gallon of milk, it's like whatever, dude. It's a gallon of milk. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna die from some fatty content in milk, but a can of Copenhagen cheese.
I don't know. There are a lot of black people who are lactose intolerant.
Okay, there you go. What else did you do on that channel that you're either proud of or embarrassed of? What's your proudest moment on that challenge? And what's your or just the experience, the business experience of it, growing an audience? What is the thing you're most proud of, and what's the thing you're like, oh God, I'm embarrassed that this is out there in the public realm?
Well, let's start with the embarrassed things. Well, I mean, I've done some videos, and they're more like collaboration videos with some other channels. One of them called Reckless Eating, and their content was a little less like my content. I was always like cool guy. I always had like this clearly self-proclaimed like I am the shit. Fuck everyone else, but also fuck me type of thing. So it wasn't like super egotistical.
This
to the
real,
point.
it was a bro alpha male type channel, rah.
But it had a little bit of like self-deprecation to it.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in a bromanship.
That's true.
Okay. That's like anyway, I think it's an interesting distinction because I personally would not go out and watch someone who's just sucking their own. Definitely bleep that part out, buddy. But not literally, but someone who just thinks they're so awesome.
Right.
Unless there's a mitigating factor where they become, they're like, oh, he's clearly making fun of himself.
Right.
So I think that's important. But
so you're doing this thing with reckless
reckless
food.
eating. And the reason we started with them is because, first of all, they were nearby and they were like the biggest food channel that was like, when I met them, I was at 13,000 subscribers. They were at like 430,000. They approached us about doing a collaboration. So we look at a few other things and of course, yeah, absolutely we will. So I go on their thing and they have like this crazy hot sauce. All I had to do was hold it in my mouth for a minute. No one had been able to do it from their channel. I held it for like longer and was just like, I have a very strong tolerance for spicy things and alcohol, to be honest. And So it was great because immediately we were at 23,000 after like a day of doing that video. So we went on to do many more videos with them. And I love them. Matt is an awesome guy. But their videos can get pretty gay and pretty like pretty like things that I wouldn't necessarily say or get into, which I like to think on my toes and be able to like shoot the shit. But certain things I was just like, you know, this is going to be out on camera. And there was also a time where I was afraid to talk about the fact that I'd grown up in, which I think is probably the real answer to your question. The fact that I struggled with leaving for a very long time. And I was actually going through the process of leaving. And the partner on the channel, he was one as well. And, you know, so I felt kind of ashamed for a long time because it's the antithesis of what he wants. And they have something called a knowledge report where you're basically like telling on someone. You write all the things that they did and, you know, you send it in and whatever. And someone wrote one on me, and that was actually kind of helped me to like stop giving a shit, because the fact that someone would take personal issue with the fact that I'm doing a clearly comedy channel and making fun of all kinds of stuff, you know, I was like, you know what? Fuck this shit. Who do you think that you are? Like, I'm sorry, I just can't. So, as far as that, like, I felt ashamed about a lot of things because I would say like horrible stuff. But, you know, to me, it was a joke, and to the intended viewers, they got the joke.
Yeah.
But to anyone
it's like,
else,
it's like comedy, right? From the outside looking in, you see you see a clip of somebody's comedy set where you don't see the setup for the joke and you don't understand the audience. You're like, oh, that's some really racist or homophobic or anti-transsexual, or, you know, like you and I know some up and coming comedians that make some pedophile jokes where
way worse than me.
Where you're like, whoa, you're like out of context, like, and I don't know. I personally believe in, I'm like a free speech absolutist. I think you should be able to say whatever you want, and
100%.
then the audience will find themselves either there or they will get up and leave. But out of context in a video, I know you said some shit where you're like, oh God, I hope that doesn't come up at an office meeting.
100%. Yes. And, you know, as far as like embarrassment, it wasn't a part of the character. Okay. It would be like this self chuckle. Right. But for me, it was an internal battle, you know, fighting the way that I was being perceived by the world, and in my head too. Which I think is still an issue that I have in my life. Even though I come off as super gregarious, I am extremely careful about how I approach certain people and the things that I will or will not say. Not that my attitude changes, but I have a mouth on me. And, you know, I just pick and choose what I say. Because I'm not trying to piss someone off per se, but I am trying to make them have a livelier attitude than before I met them or saw them.
Yeah. So, because I could see your personality and kind of your outlandish comments. I could see you take one more step a little bit further, you know, out of bounds, and it's like you're ending up in a bar fight every night. Yeah, like
100%. But I'll tell you, I do have a certain kind of protection where most people will look at me and they'll say, maybe I could whip his ass, but it's not worth it? Yeah,
totally. And speaking of getting into a bar fight, I want to hear what it's like to be a bouncer in Hawaii, because I think we're gonna have him on the podcast soon. I got a buddy who's used to fight MMA. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He volunteered, and this guy is a very successful businessman. Volunteers to be a bouncer at this little dive bar in LA because he just likes getting into a tussle once in a while. And he's like, if I'm doing it as a bouncer, it's kind of legal because you always have an excuse that you're just trying to get the drunk guy out of the bar. So I can only imagine you're a big dude. You've got a big mouth. You're at a bar that services a big military population and Tongans and Samoans who are not known for being small.
Right.
What is that like, dude?
I mean, it's just constant. I mean, honestly, that's where your mouth comes into play, because contrary to what your buddy, I mean, this place was kind of corporate. There were multiple franchises. Well, I think there was a corporate chain, but the one in Hawaii was specifically a franchise. But there was like one in Pasadena, up in Northern California. So they very much don't want to get sued. Nowadays you can't just whoop someone's ass.
Yeah, everybody's going to jail.
100%. And I would say Hawaii was kind of like a protected area because Hawaii is just a different fucking.
Yeah,
it's different. So the cops. If we had to whoop someone's ass, the cops would immediately believe us, which is horrible if you think about it. It's horrible. But the thing was, when it came to separating specifically locals from military, it just became, how can we try to get ahead of this before, like you can see it happening. When the Soles would come in, Samoans, they call themselves Soles, they would come in like 10 deep. And the shortest guy's like 6'4" and 250. There's giant motherfuckers too. And they would come in 10 deep. They would order red Coronas, which, if you don't know, is a Corona with grenadine, and hilariously the most, effeminate drink you could order. So they're all sitting there with red Coronas. They put the lime in. They turn it upside down. And they stand in the corner. And nothing against Samoans. There's just this particular group that would do that. And we're all like, what the fuck? Why are they? Should we get them a sex on the beach? Like, what? And they would just sit there and then eye out the whole bar of military dudes. And you could just tell that they're looking for the weakest link. They're looking for the guy who's going to give them license to start picking on them.
Yeah. And by the way, having been in the Army, I know Army guys do the same thing, right? They like just out of basic training, shaved head. They think they're all tough.
Right.
They walk into a bar, like they're also eyeing across the bar, like, yeah, who we gonna get into some shit with? Yeah.
And yeah, so you have two sides looking for a fight. So we knew the one that would be the best to calm down, which would be the locals, because who cares about these military guys? Honestly. Obviously, the bar cared. I don't know. I think they're closed down now, so I'm not going to try and speak for them. But, you guys are in a different position. You just came back from deployment. You were fighting, You're going to get a lot more trouble if you get in a fight.
Yeah. And the military guys are going to come and go.
Up. Well, also, they're going to get their asses whooped. Not one time did I ever see, just so you know, you're not going to win the fight. I don't care how big and strong you are. They roll deep, and it's not just one guy who can and will whoop your ass. His buddy, his brother, his cousin, they're all going to step in.
When The Rock is the littlest guy in the family, you know you got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? They grow up fighting, real hand-to-hand. Like, even the women can whoop your ass. I'm not kidding. I've been in a fight with a small girl.
We'll get to that. All right, so you're working there, and then obviously your job is, because you don't want to be in the middle of this shit with punches flying everywhere. So you got good at de-escalating and running your mouth in a good way.
Yeah, so I would just step in. I could see them eyeing out some military guys. The military guys are like, do you even know how much months of hand-to-hand combat I have? And I would just walk over and be like, hey, did you guys, you guys want another round of red Coronas? I'm not paying for it, but I'll make sure the bartender gets it for you. And they thought it was, they thought it was funny because, I'm obviously just coming there to kind of like press the decompress button a little bit. And then one of them would be like, hey, G. And by the way, that's actually where I got my nickname, G. I did not give myself that name. I tried to carry Guillaume until I was 21 years old, until I arrived in Hawaii. And I started meeting some local people, and they're like, we're not calling you Guillaume, we're calling you G. I was like, okay. And then it's stuck to this day, obviously. But they say, hey, G, what the hell are you looking at me like that for? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Do I look like I'm a part of that crew? And do I look like I'm some sort of like, do I look like Professor X and I can read his mind? I think it might have something to do with the fact that you're glaring at him holding a red beer. I mean, I would be a little bit unimpressed too. And they would laugh about it because I love to talk shit in a way that will lighten the mood, and it worked there. But in many cases, it was inevitable. The fight was going to happen whether I said something or not. And it was a 2-story pub. If there was a fight downstairs, I think it was a buzzer. If it was a fight upstairs, it was a bell. And the downstairs was like a restaurant that was closed, but downstairs meant out front. So it would tell us, because we would just rotate in positions throughout the bar. And, you know, I'd say probably like 3 to 4 nights a week, there was a fight. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, it was just with military guys that we were fighting with, because when they get a lick in, after they hit you a couple times, they're gonna leave it alone. They're not gonna beat you to a pulp, the local guys. But the military guys want to fight until, you know, the guy's fucking bleeding on the ground.
Yeah.
So they were the ones that we would end up having to fucking, you know, grab and body slam or hold down, and the cops would come. We even had a point where there was like a pretty huge brawl. They weren't even Samoans. There was like 15 Filipino dudes, all under 5'5". Okay, but they were like scrappy little fuckers, and they were not only fighting with the people in the bar, like the Marines and shit, but they were fighting with us. And I remember, I heard the buzzer come downstairs, and there was already a tussle upstairs with a couple of them. I came out to chaos. I have never seen that many people throwing blows at once. It was like a WWE Royal Rumble. So many people fighting, and I just grabbed the first skinny little Filipino dude and just like threw him to the ground. Some like army guy is trying to fight, and then 5 minutes later, the MPs show up.
Oh, yeah.
MPs, which they don't really have jurisdiction out of off the base, but they basically got a call that there was a brawl. So HPD, Honolulu Police Department, and you know, the MPs show up and they start beefing, because the MPs, you know, they're like, all these guys are government property, and you know, Honolulu Police Department are like, no, they happen on, you know, city property. So it was just one of the most fucked up nights I've ever seen. But to be honest, you know, what was it like? I mean, to me, I loved it. For me, it wasn't even about the fighting. It was the fact that it doesn't matter how ugly you are, you're going to get laid by like by sevens and up.
I love how everything just comes back to, was there women involved? It didn't work out for me with the ladies.
Well,
Like, I might have to take a right cross by a Samoan, but there's a really cute girl at the bar who thinks the bouncers are hot.
listen, I never, to be clear, got hit by any local people.
Oh.
Except outside of the bar. I did get into a couple fights. One of those was with a Samoan woman, but it was like a boxing match. Like, she wanted to fight me, and it was kind of like they like to fight as like a cultural thing. Like, it's not like I went out and tried to fight a girl. She was like, "Oh, I'll take on you, G." And I was like, "Nah, I don't fight women." She's like, they were like, "No, bro, she can scrap." I was like, "Oh shit!" And I'm like not particularly a boxer. I'm more of a fighter. Like not a brawler, I think is too much, because I do have a little bit of technical skill. But you know, I'm not gonna just stand there and throw blows with you. I'll eat them to take you down, type of thing. And oh my God, she did hit very hard, but I don't know. I think I kind of have like a pretty good grip, and I basically tapped her out with an Americana. And it was like a light Americana, but that was a thick ass arm. Let me tell you, that was like
Why was she pissed off at you to begin with?
No, it wasn't. She wasn't pissed off. It was like I was at a bar. I was at like a house thing. It was a barbecue. We were all drinking beers, and Samoans like to fight each other for fun.
This is so awesome.
Like, they would get in a circle and they would actually fight, and like real hits. They would put on like little light, little bigger, like 8 ounce.
Yeah.
Because what, 13 ounce are the big ones, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like little lightweight gloves
Light-
for dudes that are 300 pounds.
Yeah, 100%. And they thought, the best part was, they thought that it would protect their faces. Dumb motherfuckers. It
No.
protects your hands.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for people that don't know what we're talking about, when you see a boxing match and you see these guys that can punch like a freight train with the little 8-ounce gloves on, those gloves are not there to protect the head of the person they're punching. They're simply there to protect the boxer's investment of his hands and not break his knuckles.
Right.
Like, people are always like, "Oh, well, you got punched with a glove." Like, no, dude, there's mad knockout power with a glove. The only thing that it does is save your knuckles from breaking, so the
Right.
boxer can show up 4 months later and box again.
Right, exactly. But anyway, during this, she wants to fight, and I'm like the newest person at the barbecue, And, you know, they also knew that I worked at a bar, and she said, no, I want to fight that motherfucker. And she said it all pigeon, that motherfucker. And I'm like, damn, why you got to pick me out the crowd, girl?
I love that this is initiation. Like, you're the new guy in the clique. And so they're like, well, you're not even ready to fight our men yet. We're going to have you fight our women.
Chick. Yeah, exactly. And she was a good fighter, but it was kind of like pretty sloppy. She would just hit really hard. Oh my God. She hit me with a rib shot. I was like, please don't do that again. I'm going to have to knee you in the face. Okay. I did not like that.
This is amazing. I love the idea of there's still like a warrior society out there where mom's like, oh no, I'll take you on, G.
Oh yeah. 100%. If you were to go to American Samoa and piss off some MILF, and I'm sorry guys, I'm very careful with the word MILF. And that it's not like there aren't gorgeous Samoan women, but there's also a stereotypical idea of Samoan women, and that does tend to be, you know, they're a little on the bigger side. So I mean, different folks, different strokes. I think we know someone who might be into it, but you know, if you were to just like try to aggress like a woman with kids, she's likely to whoop your ass. 100% to your point.
Don't hit on the wrong woman in
She'll headbutt you.
Yeah, in U.S. Samoa, do not hit on the wrong woman at the bar. This is the moral of the story. If you take nothing else away from this podcast,
which is interesting because they actually still have a kingdom. They're actually one of the few nations. Western Samoa, I think, they still have a kingdom. I mean, how many countries are there nowadays that have a kingdom still?
Yeah. Yeah, I learned this in some class I was taking a while back of all the, you know, U.S. territories that we don't think of. Obviously, a lot of people think of Puerto Rico, but U.S.
Guam.
Samoa, Guam, and there's two other ones that I always forget. Yeah, you have to look those up, Chris. What are the 5 U.S. territories that aren't states? It's Guam, Western Samoa,
U.S. Virgin Islands.
U.S. Virgin Islands, and the 5th one,
Puerto Rico,
and then there's one more that I always forget. It's like it's like halfway to Japan. I don't even know
Okinawa?
No, that's in Japan.
Okinawa
Anyway, look it up.
is not in Japan.
Okinawa's not in Japan?
It is a separate country.
shut up, G.
Look it up.
Oh my goodness. We're gonna get, by the way, my geography is so bad. I mean, I was probably 15 before I realized Baltimore wasn't a state. I'm a purebred idiot when it comes to, I remember in Boy Scouts, somebody was like trying to get into the Naval Academy. One of the kids that was like 3 or 4 years old, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Annapolis. I'm like, oh, where's that? He's like, in Annapolis? And I'm like, where's that? I was like, I'm just such a moron.
Okay, so the 5th one is Northern Mariana Islands.
Oh, the Mariana Islands. There you go. By the Mariana Trench. That's the weird one that like nobody ever remembers. Well, I don't anyway. And then if Okinawa is its own country, I'm gonna lose my shit right now because I would have bet my bottom
It's a
dollar.
Japanese island.
It's a Japanese island. Okay, so it's still part of the Japanese kingdom. Okay, maybe Okinawans think that they are separate. This is practicing the ASMR. We're gonna talk to each other real quiet. All right. So what happens after Hawaii? Because I know you bounced around to a bunch of different jobs, and like obviously all these stories have a happy ending because all these skills end up coming together where you end up like everybody else who's a loan officer. And I mean, everybody else who's a loan officer failed at something else. And they're like, oh, okay, this is cool. I can do some good here. I can help some people. I can make some money. But what happens between top producing loan officer and getting beat up by Samoan women?
So I spent about 4 years in Hawaii. And to be clear, I moved there when I stopped working for the church. So I hadn't spoken to my parents in a few years. And somehow we got back in contact. And I decided that I'm going to move back to Clearwater, Florida. When I say back to, I haven't been there since I was a small child. So I ended up moving there. I was in a long-term relationship, and I lived there for close to 6 years. I'm kind of skipping over it because it's a very boring time in my life outside of the fact that that's where I created Blum Gum. But Florida to me is a super boring place.
Yeah, not right now. They're the only place open. Everybody headed to Florida. Oh, Texas too. Yeah, everybody headed to Florida to party.
Yeah, true. And I actually went to Florida recently. Sorry, guys, I had to go to Busch Gardens. It was dope. And people weren't wearing masks. I was. I'm from California, so I take it, I think, a little more seriously. But it was just, I don't know. It was not
uninteresting.
my cup. What?
Florida was uninteresting.
It's uninteresting being a Californian. mainly due to landscape, due to the fact that it gets insanely humid and hot all day. So there's like a lot of things that you can't do outside, or if you do, you're just gonna sweat your ass off, and so you just end up drinking all the time, which is obviously a personal problem for some people and not for others. So Florida, I think, was just kind of like a reset area. I got my credit under control. I had gone a little buck wild in Hawaii. I didn't have, I had money, but like I gained a lot of debt. And so I started, when I was in the Sea Org, I worked in essentially marketing. Okay. So I decided that that was my skill. Okay? And I started getting hired at companies as a marketing person, super low level data analyst. And then I moved up to where I was running a department and then a division. And then Blumgum started. Okay, I'm glazing over Florida just because who cares? Blumgum was the next major move because in 2013, Blumgum had amassed, I think we were up to 13,000, and we were starting to get sponsorships. We were also starting to make a little bit of money off of channel. So the guy who I was doing the channel with had already moved to LA, and I was like shooting videos in Florida and sending them, and he was editing, and then we would post them. So I was like, well, I just need to come back to LA, which is where I grew up, and basically do this Blumgum thing full time. And I decided, I tried to get hired at a couple companies, and I didn't go to college. I had no real, background. I got my GED when I was 15. I have nothing to show for my education, although I am kind of smart, but I think it's more kind of like faking it until you make it and kind of acquiring. I have a large-ish vocabulary, which allows me to feign intelligence. But I do have a curious mind, and I will skim over enough stuff until I kind of have a competent understanding of things, and then I'll move on to the next thing.
But don't forget to like define every word before you move on.
Oh yeah, you got to make sure you are definitely following, clearing a word properly.
Clearing a word properly.
You guys can go ahead and look into that. It's one of the good things about, you do end up getting a really good understanding of the English language because you have to. Anytime you come across a word you don't understand, you have to clear it, and there's a process. So you define the word, you do sentences, you then look at the derivation and the etymology of the word. Giving you a full understanding to be able to use that word properly in a sentence in the future. But that's neither here nor there. Blumgum started blowing up. I started doing it full time, and then that's where I started my personal training company, which was a very interesting concept because I started it with like just people that I knew in LA. A lot of them happened to be a part of the previous religion, cult, whatever. But I have a very specific kind of like attitude when I train, which is why I think it's not like I was the best trainer, but I was a good motivator. Yeah. And I was good at selling people on my product. And I would just basically start these group sessions. I started doing personal training sessions, and I developed a couple of celebrity clients, which I won't get into, but they paid the real bills. The other ones, allowed me to start paying off other bills and other debts. But at the same time, Blumgum was blowing up, and I started doing like collaborations with channels that were way, way, way bigger than me. Our stuff started getting on the news. It started getting shared all kinds of places. I did a collaboration with this new character that we brought on because one of my problems with Blumgum was the fact that it was always me all the time. And as egotistical as I am, I also get kind of bored, and I assume that the audience was as well, just it being me all the time. So we added this new character named Beardman, which had like this, it's like this guy, he had this ridiculous beard. I want to say it was like at least 2 feet long. And in the first video, we did a video, and it was a drinking challenge, and if I won, I got to cut off his beard. We're talking about like 4 years of beard growth. Which would you allow that to happen?
No chance.
No way, right? I beat him, and I shaved off his beard on camera.
Oh.
And it was like, that video blew up. I want to say it had 6 million views, which is a lot. I don't care who you are. 6 million views is hard to come by.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money that it would produce as well. So, you know, the thing is, it's when I was doing Blumgum, you start to get exposed to the celebrity subculture of LA, which everyone who's an influencer thinks that they're like a real celebrity when you're not. And I'm sorry, very few YouTubers, in my opinion, I would say like under 10, are actual celebrities, in my opinion. And I started dealing with the concept of, you know, I would make a video, I'd put it out, within 24 hours, it had 25,000 views and 5,000 comments, and people were treating me and calling me a celebrity, which I don't think to this day I've ever even breached the concept of being a celebrity. Maybe recognizable, maybe 10 seconds of fame. But I started to lose interest in it because it was so, yes, I'm egotistical. Like in a conversation, I like to talk about myself, but I don't like being treated like I'm some sort of whatever. And there was actually a time, it's interesting to note, I was flying from Florida to Philly, and the channel had been live for probably 6 to 8 months. And I'm walking through the airport, and there's this 8-year-old kid, white kid, with his parents walking through the airport. And I see him look up, and his eyes go directly to me. And he's like, oh my God, imagine an 8-year-old kid, 2 very just regular looking white parents. He's like, oh my God, black guy. To some black guy walking down the airport. And the parents
Are mortified.
Mortified. Their child, who they probably, you know, raised to be a good kid, is just calling out black people in the middle of a fucking airport walkway. And the distinction is, I called myself black guy on the show.
Right.
So
He knew you from YouTube.
correct. And they freak out. They come over. Oh my God, sir, I'm so sorry. You know, we did not. And I said, listen, it's hilarious because I actually call myself black guy on YouTube. And you should have seen the dad's face. His face went pale for 2 things. I think one, that he could not believe that his son did this still. And 2, the fact that he watches a YouTube channel with me on it.
Yeah. I don't know what's more disturbing, right?
Right.
That happened in the airport, or that they're letting their 8-year-old watch YouTube unfiltered.
I think that he probably got the shackles put on his
Yeah.
computer directly after that. He got the permissions added. So, you know, it was just, I started to lose interest. And it was also extremely immature. You know what I mean? Like, I probably could have transitioned to some sort of lifestyle, this or that. But at the same time, me and my partner were kind of like splitting. He found, I think, his now wife. I think he has a kid now. We haven't talked in years. But he was also a little more, you know, he was more into the technical part. He became a cinematographer. He started a business with 2 other guys, where it's like a production studio. They make like commercial samples and hope they get picked up. And they just make a bunch, and then one they'll make like 25 to 100 grand on. And then I started at the same time getting pretty heavily into my personal training, just because that's back when I was like pretty fit for my size. And I think I had a bias in getting people to become my clients.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if a big buff black dude's like, hey, I'll train you, you know, I think I started off like 10% beneath the going rate, and then it obviously raised up as I became more popular. But, you know, it was a misnomer. That said, I did create some very, very good products. I'm not saying that it was trash training, but eventually, if you run enough, if you do so many push-ups, you know, you're going to get to the point where you start to develop a physique that you like.
And to your point, it really is the motivation, right? Because we had my friend on here who his whole personal training, he calls it personal training concierge, and his motto is beyond the hour. Because he's like, even if you're rich as can be and you're paying for an hour to 2 hours a day of private training, that means there's 23, 24 other hours a day where you're by yourself. If you don't get the motivation to stick with your fitness goals,
Right.
it doesn't matter what you do in that hour, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, you can just tear your body into exhaustion. If I come home and eat a pack of Oreos and a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper,
Right.
I ain't gonna look like you.
It's true, you know. And I used to have a saying as well, not to one up your buddy. I'm just kidding. No, but my thing, you know, they would ask me, they would say, you know, I feel like crap today. I do not want to come in. And the one thing that I would always get that session to be done would be by saying, it's not what we do, that we do. We just need to get you in here and develop the routine. And that's really, I mean, really true when you're doing your own training and you're not being trained by someone. Sometimes you just got to go in the gym, get on the treadmill for 10 minutes. Like if you've had like a really hard 2 weeks of training, you do not feel like doing it, just to make sure you don't break the routine. You just have to arrive there, do something, and then make sure you show up tomorrow when you're actually going to be feeling a lot better. So it's a routine, it's a regimen type thing. And, you know, it was fairly successful for a couple years until I started making mistakes, you know, outside of the personal training thing.
We can just leave it at that. It's fine. Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, let's leave it at that. You know, and this is when I was going through like a massive growth phase in my life. Mentally, I was unwinding my own clock. As I mentioned earlier, you know, I wanted to go off the rails at some points. Like, I was just like, fuck it, you know, and I'm not saying it was good, but it kind of had to happen considering I am a self-proclaimed school of hard knocks. In order for me to learn, I must make the mistake. If you tell me I shouldn't do something, I'm damn sure going to do it twice. When I was a kid, one of the distinct things that I remember, we didn't really hang out with our parents too much. But when we did, I remember a lot of them. One of the times, I think I was 3 years old, I was messing around with the outlet somewhere. I had a fork. And
like all smart kids, we
Yeah.
got to stick a knife in the socket at some point. In your
right,
life.
it's the metal on the metal, they got to touch, right? And you got to hold it when it happens. And I remember my dad had said something about like, don't play with the outlets. And of course, he's like over there sitting, and I'm like, it was like a very heavy shock for a 3-year-old. And he was like, I told you not to do. He takes the fork, da da da. Please believe I did it like 3 more times. Like within 10 minutes, I got another fork or another piece of metal, and I did it. And then after that, I decided maybe I shouldn't do it. It wasn't that he told me no, it's the fact that it hurts. And it hurts 3 times in a row. So, you know, the same thing applied to later on in my life because, you know, I just had to make certain mistakes on my own to say that I learned it the hard way. It was kind of like a badge that I would wear in my mind to know that I had gone through what could go wrong in order to know what to do right. But also experience, I was a little bit of I had to go through experiences to know that I had lived life in my mind.
Do you think you're getting older and wiser now? Do you think you still have to stick the fork in the outlet to some degree, or are you willing to learn from other people's mistakes?
I definitely am willing to consider them. I mean, honestly, I think I was just stupid as a kid. I think it was coupled with the fact that I had very little life experience in the real world, and I was actually like mentally underdeveloped, in my opinion, just because I had such contained and sheltered social interaction that I didn't actually understand what the real world was until I moved to Hawaii and got drunk for the first time. And I was like, whoa, waking up in the morning sucks afterwards, you know? But then I did it many, many, many more times. But yeah, I mean, now, yeah, I think I operate in a much more logical realm. And excuse me, I don't need to make the mistake because I can see the through line of it and already predict how it's going to throw me off track from where I'm trying to go now. And I think that's probably one of the major catalysts. I wouldn't say it's that I'm getting older. I think it's that I now have a goal. I've now put together like an eye on the prize of what I'm trying to do. Everything else is a distraction. yes, you got to get distracted a little bit to decompress a little bit. You know, some people like to go to the gym. Some people like to have a beer. You know, I would say you've probably turned me on to cigars, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There's a great cigar bar in San Diego, which is where I've spent majority of my time during the pandemic. Because they've been open, they've been closed, but you could always sit outside. You could always buy a cigar. And I would go there and do that and, you know, smoke outside. And it's something that has allowed me to temper the things that I get into, because a cigar is expensive, especially down there. They're marked up 3 to 4 times. And if all you do
Tourist
is,
area.
yeah, 100%. I live right next to the Gaslamp District, if any of you guys have been to San Diego. And, you know, when I do that, it prevents me from going out and getting a beer or, you know, getting into trouble somehow. But I think I will always try to get into something, because I'm a single male who's 36 years old, turning 37. Most people have kids or a wife at this point. That is not necessarily my goal. I mean, if it happens, great. But I am 100% okay with just being a single dude who rocks out the rest of his life. But I'm just working on trying to make sure that I'm never broke again. And also acquiring, you know, I have a little bit of entrepreneurial stuff. I skipped over a little bit between personal training and working for you, Scott. I actually GM'd a donut shop,
Yeah, you've got
bar.
all these weird little business ventures where you're like, it's just an interesting skill set, man.
Well, I mean, that was honestly, I think, had I not done that, I don't think I could have been a loan officer.
Yeah.
Because the hustle of trying to, and these were businesses that were all right next to each other. It was a craft beer bar, donut shop, which we got open, but we never really did it properly. And then a barbecue joint called G's Barbecue, which never culminated to anything. We couldn't pass the inspection because for some reason they're telling us that we're not allowed to smoke in a barbecue joint. And like, what else are you going to do with the meat? You know, grill it? No, that's not barbecue. So the bottom line was running those businesses, having the employees, firing them, hiring them, you know, trying to deal with the bums on Hollywood Boulevard, trying to get in your business and take a shit in your sink. You know, these are all, you know, like it toughened up like kind of my entrepreneurial fiber and gave me the hustle that I needed. Because when you're a loan officer, whether you work at a call center or you're self-source or, you know, whatever realm you live in, you got to treat it like your own business. Yes, you may have a boss, but you're only going to make the money that you generate. Whether it leads that are handed to you or leads that you get from realtors that you work with, you have to treat it like a business. Because if you don't follow through with the things in the transaction, it's not going to fund. And it's going to be a bunch of wasted time, not only for you, but every piece of admin staff that worked on the file. So it definitely kind of, and I wouldn't say that I was fully, it just put me in the position to be able to begin to receive the information and watch people like you, Justin. I mean, do people on the podcast know who these people are?
It doesn't matter.
All right. So
They'll be on one day.
The office that I was in, you know, had a lot of like pretty high production loan officers. Ron, my buddy, you know, and I was able to see and absorb the information and glean skills and the way that they talked and the things that they did. And there's actually this really good guy who is really good at generating leads. I think there might be a book called Lead Generate. But yeah, I mean, it teaches you a hustle. So, and to be clear, I started off in self-source with you. I started off as your assistant, and I was going to get my license. I pushed it off way too long, like close to a year, I think. But then when I took the test, I passed. And I think I was kind of scared because there were certain people who were like, yeah, the test is really hard. I failed 4 times. And I'm like, what? And like every time you take the test, I think it's like $108 or $113. And there's like a forced 6-month interval before you can do it again. And then when I finally took the test, I passed and I got an 80%. I mean, who cares? You just got to get 75. But the thing about that test is it does not teach you how to be a loan officer. So, you know, even after that, I had already gotten kind of a little complacent with just like regular money. I mean, you guys paid me pretty decently for what I was doing. But it's not until you make your first loan officer paycheck that you realize that was a waste of time. I should have been on it way before then.
Yeah. There's that interesting thing when people are fully commissioned where something eventually happens, and some people go into a fully commissioned job thinking this. Some people, it does take till they get those first couple paychecks where they're like, oh, like I can kind of see this. The sky is the limit. Like as hard as I want to work and as much effort as I want to put in, that's exactly how much I'm going to get back out of this. Which I don't know why. And you know me, everything ends up coming back to politics. I don't know why in our modern political world, it's like there's kind of this, I don't know if it's nobility or acceptance of like just being broke or downtrodden or homeless. And look, I get it that there's a certain cross section of people that they're going to be homeless because they just fucking got dealt a shitty hand in life, or they've got drug abuse problems or mental issues. But it's so encouraging to me when I see somebody go from a job to fully commissioned, like a salary job or an hourly job to fully commissioned, and the light bulb goes off where they're like, oh shit, like the sky really is the limit the more hustle I put in. And I know when that happened for you, it's like, you know, I think in some ways probably changed your life, which is crazy.
For sure, it has changed my life. It goes back to what you just said. You know, when you first met me to now, the progression is insane. And it really did have to do with, you know, handling your finances. And a lot of times it's hard to handle your finances unless you have some sort of a large influx of cash, either by someone else or by yourself. But the downside of getting it from someone else is it never really changes the underlying factors that created the issue in the first place. When you've made your own money, the first time you make, and honestly, this is
whatever dollar,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, a significant amount of money in one shot, and you know exactly what you had to do to get that. It kind of like the dots will connect in your head. This needs to be saved. These need to be paid off. You need to start eliminating the issues so that you can do more of this and focus more on this without, you know, being pulled in the direction of whatever is troubling you in your life. So, you know, for me, the first thing that I did was pay off like about almost $39,000 worth of debt over the course of 2 months, which to me was insane because I had been struggling with this debt for about 4 years.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I mean, for some people, that's probably not a lot of money. For some people, that's probably a lot of money. For me, it was a significant amount of money. I was able to pay for it and not default and not have late payments. But I mean, that's a lot. It becomes depressing. Like, how am I ever going to be able to get rid of this?
It weighs down on you. Like, you know, you and I see it all the time. These people that get sold some bill of goods, like, oh yeah, you know, just go to pick any private college in America. And you know, when you come out, like, that's what you got to do. You got to go to a 4-year college. And you and I see the byproduct of this like crushing debt where people have $50, $100, $200,000 of debt to get a degree where they probably could have got the same $50,000 or $60,000 a year job without the degree. And it's just, I can feel it when I'm on the phone with those people of like how crushing that debt load is to their psyche.
And to be clear, guys, you know, not everyone on this call or on the podcast is a loan officer. So even now, when your student loans are in deferment, we still have to hit you for 1% of your debt. So if you have $200,000 in debt and you don't have a payment now because of the pandemic, we still have to add $2,000 in payments to your debt to income ratio, which could disqualify you for the loan, okay? Yeah. Just because we have to, you know? And if you look about it, I think in 1960, to go to Harvard, I think was like $4,000. Now it's $45,000 a semester, which
is crazy.
Holy shit. You know, so, I mean, and I'm a big proponent. I think school should be free, to be honest. I think the fact that it's been privatized and, you know, made the way that it is not conducive with evolution of our species or our civilization. because everyone should, if they want to get educated, be able to go get educated, because theoretically the concept behind it is they're going to add back to wherever they're at and hopefully take everyone to the next level.
Right.
But when you got professors making, $400,000 a year, depending on the college they're at, sometimes more if they're tenured, how are you going to support that pay? But at the same time, teachers are the most underpaid but valuable profession, in my opinion, in the country. Second up would probably be nurses, but nurses make decent money. But everyone needs a nurse at some point in their life.
It is really weird because you and I never want to talk about, as you don't either, a specific client, but it is interesting how many misconceptions are out there about what people make. And it's like, I can talk to somebody for 5 minutes, and I've been doing this for 20 years and have looked at tens of thousands of loan applications, and I can just tell the way they're talking about their career, the way, because you just said that, like, there's some professors out there that make $400,000 a year, and people are going to be like, oh, I'm fact checking that. That's bullshit. I looked up the pay scale at whatever college and they make $87,000 a year. It's like, well, then you get paid for this grant money, and then
Right.
you get some other stipend for some bureaucratic bullshit or
Right.
whatever. And it's like, you and I, especially since we're both licensed in other states, we see public school teachers that are making 35 or 40 grand a year. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem sustainable
Right.
to attract good people to educate our kids. And then you and I have seen on the other side where it's like, hey, how did you work out all these drug deals where you're a public employee and you're making 300 or 400 grand a year? Like that doesn't seem sustainable either. It's very weird. And when I talk to people again about politics, I'm always shocked how ignorant people are about the overall economy and what people make and how much people are in debt. And it's kind of one of the blessings and curses about our business is we get to know a lot about the overall financial picture of
Totally.
the citizens of this country.
It would blow your mind. I talk to people in 20 states, all over the United States, in all different kinds of professions. And, it would blow your mind at how comfortable people are with making $35,000 a year. And I'm not saying that's even bad, depending on your cost of living. Like if you love your life, you have a great, you enjoy your job and you make $35,000 a year, great and fine. In California, I would hate my life because you wouldn't be able to afford anything.
Yeah, you couldn't live.
And you'd pay so much in taxes on top of that, that you would essentially have nothing. And again, it's a subjective concept because some people just having a fantastic family and living in a mobile home. I feel like I'm getting off track here.
Yeah, it's all right.
Is beautiful. But, I just wish that it was not so lopsided from when you have a corporation, from the CEO all the way down to the janitor or sanitary professional. Because some people really struggle in this world. But then at the same time, I'm talking to them on the phone. I only do refinances. That means they already have a house. So the fact that they're able to have gotten a house on 100%, talked to a lady who made 32 grand, and she loves her life. She loves her house. She lives where was that? Delaware, where it's super cheap. Good for her.
Got a great life. Yeah.
Great life. But yeah, I think the disparity of incomes, but also just the range of incomes throughout the United States, unbelievable. And some jobs that you never think. What's really interesting, not data scientist, lab scientist. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. I mean, just doing research in a lab, right? Like,
No. It's one step down from a doctor.
Okay.
So a lot of people in the Philippines tend to come over, like, and these are people who are very well educated. It's harder for them to it's more work for them to become a doctor. But with the degrees that they have in the Philippines, they can become, I think it's a lab scientist, but it's basically they're trained to be a doctor, one step below a doctor. They can't make diagnoses, and they deal with a lot of the samples, but also they make really good money, like $120K a year, which depending on, what state you're in, that's good money. I mean, in Florida, that's amazing money. In California, I would say that's good money. To be honest, you're not getting rich, but you're able to pay your bills. You should be debt free if you're responsible, but
Be able to buy a house, have that decent middle class living.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's just really opened my eyes to the general, the state of the economy. Because one thing that I think a lot of people tend to mess up is they think the economy is the stock market. I mean, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, no.
It is not, right?
The fact that the stock market has become the barometer for the economy is kind of weird.
Yes.
And it's also very illusionary because I think I've read some stocks, and maybe Chris can look this up. I think I've read something, it's like that Pareto principle where it's like 20% of Americans own 80% of the stock market. So,
Mhm.
so the stock market going up or down only really affects positively or negatively 20% of the stockholders. And then there is some trickle down effect where obviously if Tesla can go public and raise a bunch of money, they will end up employing more people. But those ramifications are harder to quantify. Whereas I think the health of the country or the economy should be measured in other ways, like how much of somebody's income is going to interest or debt,
Right.
because like I always come back to this because I can just feel the conversation. People can almost always find a way to make extra money. They can do some hustle. They can, we've seen people that are making $100,000 a year and they're like, well, I want to buy a house, so I've been driving for Uber the last year because I wanted to save a down payment. I'm like, good for you, man. Like, there's always a way to make more money, but if you're simultaneously going into more debt as you're making more money, you're not really getting anywhere.
True.
So for the economy, I would love for the news to report stuff like the national savings rate or,
Right.
What percentage of people's income is going to debt. But yeah, I'm guessing.
As of 2018, according to the New York Times, 84% of all stocks owned by Americans belong to the wealthiest 10% of households.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
The,
Man.
the problem is there's no way they're ever going to get that information. There's so many people who don't file their taxes or underfile their taxes or there's that information is just not available because not everyone has a CPA or an accountant, and there's no record or paper trail of where their money goes. Not to mention, there's so many cash businesses. And the new Uber, you know what the new Uber is, right?
No. What's the new Uber?
Okay, I don't agree with it, but it's OnlyFans.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is a horrible.
So I am so glad you brought this up because I kind of wanted this to come up organically on the podcast because I have an interesting. So for people that don't know, OnlyFans is the quasi new porn, right? I mean, that's really, it's mostly, not exclusively, but it's mostly attractive women or a subset of women that a subset of Americans would find attractive.
Yeah.
Different fetishes for different people, I guess. Where, they're basically putting their content, they'll attract people on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and then they'll attract people to pay some monthly fee to get content behind the paywall, which the content behind the paywall can or cannot be pornographic, but it's starting to go that direction. Mostly it's pornographic, okay? And it's interesting, and my criticism is like, I'm a total free market libertarian. If Blumgum or my sister or some hot Instagram influencer can put up, content behind a paywall and make $20 an hour or $20 a month, good for you. Like, I'm all about the free market. What worries me more than the girls that are putting it up, and it's predominantly female, is what is going on with the psyche or the finances of the guys that are paying.
Oof.
Because in my mind, I picture the guy who's paying for that, and this is very prejudiced and stereotypical, to be kind of that like hermit.
Incel.
Yeah, incel. Hermit who lives in mom's basement, doesn't have the social skills to meet a girl who might want to date them.
Right.
And in some fucked up fantasy world, like guys who go to strip clubs and think that the girl fell in love with them. It's like, no, they fell in love with your dollar bills,
right?
Buddy. They're not falling in love with you. I feel like we're going to end up with this whole generation of like younger men who don't know how to talk to women, and they think that all sexualized interactions are like a pay to play model. Like, I'm really worried that this is going to mess up the psyche of like a whole generation of young men.
I agree with you. I also agree with you on the complete polar opposite side. What is it doing to the women who are making money off of it? is that their only value to this world is to, show themselves nude online? Like, I don't agree with it. But also, I agree with you on the fact that it's not my place to tell anyone what to do.
Yeah.
If it's not deplorable, I mean, it
It
depends
is
on who you ask.
deplorable. Like I don't care. I really
Right.
don't care that it exists. I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm a free market guy. However you needed to find a way to make money in COVID. But I'm like, ooh, if we just really talk about the long-term good for society, I gotta think this is a net negative.
It's a net negative for sure. Is only detracting from, and it depends on what your morality is, But at the same time, some of the people who you think are the cleanest people in the world have some of the dirtiest secrets.
Yeah.
Just look at your homeboy Gates.
Oh, well, everybody's got some weird fetish. I don't know. He's my homeboy. Like,
I'm kidding.
okay, there we
Yeah.
go. I was gonna say, whoa. Again, and I just, there's certain things where I can look at it and be like, yes, that is allowed to be part of a free society. But then I can also take a step back and be like, but would I want my kids participating?
Sure not.
And this is one of those things where I think having kids give people perspective where it's like, hey, I'm not the morality police. I wouldn't pass legislation. I wouldn't vote for a bill that said OnlyFans can't exist. But at the same time, would I want my daughter or my son participating as either a entrepreneur or a subscriber? Like,
Right.
fuck no. Like, that's not what I think we want for society.
Right.
And for whatever reason, in our modern day, saying that out loud, somebody would frame that as like, well, Scott's a sexist. He doesn't think women should have a right to earn money. I'm like, no, exactly the opposite. Women
Right.
can earn money however they want.
Right.
But I also don't know if that's a celebrated part of culture that like we want to encourage. I don't know. It's just weird, man.
I think the dawn of technology is going to create things that are inevitable and that we cannot change. Technology, I would say the iPhone was the game changer.
Yeah.
Because it put the power of a computer in your hand, and it forced Wi-Fi to get better, forced 5G to come out, which, I love 5G.
Yeah, so do I.
But
I mean, we're really playing with toys in the last decade that we don't really know what the consequences are.
at all. And I think, like you said, it's going to have an overall negative effect long term. And I can't say I'm down with it, but at the same time, who am I? I had my opinions back in the day when someone was like, you shouldn't do, and I'd be like, fuck you in my mind. Who are you to tell me?
Yeah.
And some of these things I for sure regret. But the main upside for me is they didn't live on the internet for the rest of my days. And even,
Well,
well,
Blumgum.
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
because there's somebody out there right now that's like, oh, you hypocritical motherfuckers. Like, you're telling us what women can and cannot do online. And you already admitted an hour ago that Blumgum has some questionable content. So I get the hypocrisy of it.
Sure.
I own the fact that I'm a hypocrite, as all human beings are. But it's like, there's this weird thing when we pass over to the sexualization part that I just think is like, I don't think I'm making this up. Japan's having a problem with their birth rate. Like, I think like 10 years ago, Chris, you're going to have to fact check this for me. I think 10 years ago.
because of the porn?
No, Japan. Yeah, because of the porn. Japan is now selling more adult diapers than they are kids' diapers because they can't get their youth to have sex and have kids because they've become completely addicted with this incel life, not meeting people in person, instant access to pornography 24/7 on the internet. And like Japan has a real problem where they have a
it's
population
a tiny
problem.
country
Yeah.
in general.
Well, and my understanding also is that they know that they can't afford to have kids, so they're just not having them.
Yeah, you got to look this up. See if that fact about them selling more adult
Diapers.
diapers versus baby diapers is a real thing. Because the other thing that's interesting about Japan is they can't fix the problem the way American does, is because they can't fix the same way American would because it's insanely hard to immigrate to Japan. So they're not about letting anybody into the country. Like, they can't grow their youth population through immigration because they have probably some of the most strict immigration laws in the world. And so if you don't allow immigration and your young people ain't fucking, you're literally a dying country.
You got a baby problem.
You got a
big
baby
dog.
problem.
And honestly though, isn't that just Darwinism?
I don't know, man.
It's unfortunate.
But I like Japanese culture. I like samurai movies and anime. Like, I need
You
them.
love
I need them to keep
sushi.
making.
You
I do.
just
I
like
love
sushi.
sushi. Like, it's so weird. I love everything about Japanese culture, and there is nothing that makes me want to go to Japan. I don't know if they've been so good at exporting their culture that I'm like, oh, I don't even need to go there, right? It's like,
No, I definitely want to go to Japan, and I think you should go, and I think you should go with me.
so that'd be we would get in trouble. My wife would not allow that. But my son, my 19-year-old, he's taking Japanese in college right now. He grew up just loving anime and comics and kind of that escapism of
Is he
that
a
world.
weeaboo?
What? A weeaboo?
Can you, Chris? Can you?
All right. So first
pull
thing
up
on the
weeaboo?
diapers, I think Chris has got this.
So yeah, first of all, I found a thing on the Atlantic that simply just says they will be outselling baby diapers soon.
Yeah.
But
adult
the other
diapers
thing
for
it
me.
points out is that the weird thing about their country that's not real in any other country is that the highest spending is by people over 65 years old.
Oh yeah. So they have
So
have basically
people over 60 account for 44% of Japan's consumption.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
So they've got a bunch of young kids that should be out meeting people, having sex, having babies, spending money, like adding to the national GDP, and they're not. They're
Right.
not. And I'm worried, and I'm not blaming, of course, this all on OnlyFans, but I'm worried that OnlyFans is a symptom of like America starting to go to that direction where it's like kids are lost, right? Kids are shooting up schools. Kids don't know how to interact with people and have conversations. Kids think that like 100% of their sexual interaction can come online through a subscription service. Like it's a pretty scary moment in time.
I wish and hope that technology does not take over our lives so much that we become a Wall-E generation, and we're already well on our way there. A Peloton is not the same as going out and running in the streets through the mountains and getting fresh air in your lungs and having the scenery and being able to look out at things. You're looking at a video and you're running. Yes, you're getting in shape, but mentally, does it have the same effect? Probably. I mean, I'm going to say almost definitely not.
Yeah.
It is a good functional way to maybe start getting in shape, but I don't think it's necessarily the best thing to do. I think it should be a good transitionary tool to get out more.
Yeah. It's the Peloton's basically a supplement, right? It shouldn't be the only thing you're doing. Cause like you said, you got to get out there and you got to get there and be amongst people. Cause we're human. We're like social creatures.
Right.
There's a guy that you and I have talked about, and I watched a bunch of his YouTube videos, Scott Galloway, and I've brought this up in the podcast before. He's worried about the Peloton as a symptom of another problem where it's like, if you're, let's say, wealthier, you can basically live in your own bubble for the rest of your life. You know, you can watch exactly the type of TV you want. You can watch exactly the kind of news you want. You can do a Peloton workout with an instructor who looks just like you. You know, you can go through and select by, music type. Obviously, you can see a profile picture of, I'd really, I'd really like to run watching a white female while listening to Rage Against the Machine. There it is, right? So it's like, so the fact that the technology universe, and you can pick the type of girl that you want to look at on OnlyFans, it's really allowing us to be in this super segregated bubble where it's like, oh, well, if I don't go to the movies anymore, I don't see people that don't look like me unless I make a conscious effort. If I work out in the Peloton, I don't go to the gym and run into G and strike up a friendship with somebody who I might have never met in a different world.
Right.
And it's like, it's a little scary where it's like, oh, I can self-select into my own news bubble if I want to, my own ethnic bubble. I don't even have to be around people to do, lowly tasks like shopping. It's like, yeah, but that's where you went out into the community and met people. And like, I know that that's been hard on you because you're a really social guy. You like going to a bar, shooting pool, and meeting 5 different randoms,
Right.
It's
actually what I love, to be honest. First of all, to your point, I think what's happening is an alternate reality is being created. Anyone's reality, whatever they want it to be, they can create, whether it be sexual or enjoyment or whatever. But the problem is that's not what reality is. It's not. When you go outside, people have devolved social skills nowadays. They don't want to have a conversation. If you ask them a question, they look at you like you just, told them that they smell like, whatever. Yeah, and it's sad because that is going to have a major effect on our country. I would say in the next 20 years, even if not sooner. I'd say within the next 10 years. I think that we're going down a bad path with technology. Not that I don't love technology, okay? I think it's amazing, but I think our dependency on it has become too strong, and it is going to change the intellectual capacity of our race. Because intellect is not just what you know and what you're able to process as information. There's also a psychological aspect to it as to how you react to certain things. Like if you're watching YouTube all day or playing your video games or watching OnlyFans or on your Peloton, and then you go out into the real world and you get slapped with a large dose of reality of, something significant happening in real life, you're not now able to deal with that because you're just used to it happening to other people or seeing it in an artificial world rather than being able to process that information and psychologically control your feelings about it.
Yeah.
And I just think there's repercussions from our technology boom that are not yet even known, understood, and definitely have not been realized. And I don't even know what the solution to it would be because we're so far down the rabbit hole that we're basically, it's going to be the Matrix pretty soon, man.
Yeah.
We're going to be a program.
It's interesting you say that because that ability to control your psyche and this is interesting, and I'm not going to use this person's name because I think he's a great father. But in the pandemic, and we're here in California where everybody's locked down, nobody's gone to school. I've been asking him, I'm like, hey, I think he has a preteen or maybe teenage son, somewhere right in between like that 11 and 15-year-old. I'm like, how's it been on your son? Because like, these are some really formidable years, right? Like
Sure.
You're going through puberty, you're learning how to talk to girls, like you're maybe falling in love with sports or playing guitar or whatever. And he's like, well, he's got this great social interaction with all of his friends. They like play Call of Duty together and whatnot. And they can still talk to each other. They can still kind of jive online and talk shit. And he's like, sometimes I have to go in there and be like, hey, I just heard something come out of your mouth that I'm not really proud of. I don't give a shit if you're on the internet playing some war game. And I go, and I just kind of said this off the cuff. I wasn't thinking this was like some great dad coaching moment. I was like, yeah, but that's not really real life. And then he stopped and thought about it. He's like, come to think of it, my kid has broken a couple controllers because he gets so mad in the moment or his friend's talking shit or he loses an important game. And what happens is that's not real life, right? Because if you and I go back to when we were teenage boys, if you have an outburst like that and you break something and you act like a little whining child, there's social ramifications where the other people in the room are like, they either shun you or somebody pulls you aside and says, you're not acting right. Yeah. Or you just have like shame where you're like, oh, I can't have an outburst like that. Well, now if it's all happening behind the screen and you can turn around and punch the wall or whatever, I'm like, fuck, dude, now are we creating a whole generation of men that don't know how to control their anger because in their mind, everything's that virtual reality screen. And yeah, they're talking to their friends, but if they turn around and break their remote and then they just go buy another one on Amazon that gets delivered tomorrow by 10 a.m., that's not real life.
Right.
Like that's some scary shit. And I think he had a little bit of like a self-reflection breakdown moment of like, oh, dude, fuck COVID. I got to get these kids in a room together,
right.
And I don't think we know what these ramifications are yet, and it's going to be scary.
It's going to be scary, and I'll even say that prior to where we're at now, I remember I got into computers early on in my life. I've always had an affinity, so to speak, for technology. Like my girlfriend couldn't figure out how to make the printer work. I come over, I press one button, and it does exactly what she's trying to do. She's like, I'm trying to do that for 10 times in a row. And I was like, well. And, I used to do a lot of graphic design and like typesetting, believe it or not. And Control Z was my most favorite thing. And there's been many times in my life where I've done something and immediately my brain was like, Control Z it. But I'm like, this is the real world. There is no Control Z. Once you do it.
For people that don't know, explain what Control Z is.
Control Z is undo on the computer. It just will revert. It's a quick way. Instead of pressing that little arrow that goes back, you just do Control Z, and you can do it several times to take you back as far as you want. Sometimes you can only go back so far. But Control Z is a concept of being able to immediately undo what you just did, which is not real. It's not in the real world. You can't do that.
Right.
If you shoot an animal in the head, Why did I go that extreme?
I don't
Right
know.
off the bat.
I don't know.
Jesus
Wow.
Christ. But like if you
Well, we were talking about Call of Duty. You know, I like to go hunting and stuff. So maybe it all came together in your
maybe
brain.
it correlates.
Yeah.
But if you get mad at your friend and you punch them in the chest really hard and you knock the wind out of them, you're not going to control Z that. So, you know, or if you say something out of your mouth at work that's totally unacceptable and you get fired by HR, unfortunately, Control Z does not exist unless you have a really good lawyer and lots of money. So, you know, it's the downsides of technology that I think a lot of people don't think about. I mean, there's many upsides, obviously, but the downsides, I think, are going to have worse long-term effects for people who don't know how to straddle the balance of technology in their life. And don't get me wrong, I want a super, like, I'm getting ready to buy a house soon. And I don't need a mansion, regardless of how much money I make. I just want a really nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath Craftsman that's technologically advanced. So, like, I want to be able to tell. Now in my condo, I have a little air conditioner thing. You know, it controls all the AC in the house. And I'll just sit in my bed. I'm like, it's a little warm. So lazy, but so convenient, you know. But it would be very important for me to be able to control my house without having to run all around it. Now, I think is an upgrade. But if I never have to leave my house because I have everything that I need in it, and I never have to go shopping, and I never have to, you know, everything is just delivered at the touch of a button with instant gratification, I think it's gonna reshape and almost warp what our abilities are in the future.
Yeah.
Because no matter what any religion says, humans are animals, and we are the best animal because we're the smartest animal thus far. So that we know. And people who rely on technology that other people built are going to become fucking stupid. They are. It's a Wall-E generation. You know, you don't have to know how it works. You just know that it does, and it gets you the thing that you want. So, you know, Grubhub, I've probably placed over the pandemic, I shit you not just me. Sometimes my company will buy me Grubhub. Not sometimes, actually more than 50% of the time, which has allowed me to become such a fatty now. But, you know, it's so awesome because I can go to a 5-star restaurant and have it delivered to my door. It's not the same experience, but like, I don't have to go get some crab legs. Well, I don't have to leave the house and they'll already come pre-cracked. That's amazing. I don't need to go to Costco and buy 1,000 pounds of it and then boil or grill it. Like, it's just not, I just don't think it's good. And it takes away, one of the things that I think is important in life are the memories that you're able to experience and create. It's the things that you hopefully would be looking back on, you know, as you're nearing your end of days. Wow, that sounds really bad. As you approach, you know, the end of your life, you think about the time when you went on that camping trip with your grandkids or your wife at the time or girlfriend. These are all things that in 80 years or 60 years are going to be reduced. Their memories are going to be of sitting in their house that one time when they won that one video game against their friend that they've been playing on for 12 hours that day. Like, how is that a memory? I mean, sure, it's a memory by definition, but is it like really a fulfilling thing that is good for someone? I don't know. It depends on who you ask, maybe.
Yeah. So just to close it up full circle, like, what are you looking forward to, whether that's, you know, post-pandemic, San Diego, next stage of your career? What are you excited about? Because I have the feeling that on these podcasts I tend to be a little bit of a downer and talk about all the things that are wrong with society. But what's going well, and what are you looking forward to? I don't know. Maybe it's in San Diego. Maybe it's the next adventure.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm always the type who is easily can let go and just move on. It's not necessarily an upside, but it has allowed me to have a pretty interesting life. So, you know, one of my main goals was kind of like getting rid of my debt, which is done, establishing savings and reserves into it, not where I want to be yet, but I think I have an entrepreneurial mind and feeling about life. So ultimately, I'm just stacking chips and building my own capital so that I can either join with someone who has a similar amount of capital or just fund it on my own. And ultimately, I want to get into owning a shit ton of businesses and property, real estate investing to a degree, but like I want to have a ton of small businesses. So, and I don't want to sit behind a desk for the rest of my life. It's taken a toll on, I would say, my health, but also my social interaction, my social health, because I prefer to be out in the open. And what am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to, hopefully, I don't think the pandemic is even remotely over. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I don't think that. I mean, I was just talking to a lawyer in my building. She was, I don't know if she was a public defender or whatever, but she clearly makes good money. And she said she was going to the jail that day to deal with one of her clients. And she said that they've already gotten shots through all the prisoners in prison. Now they've all contracted COVID again.
Ugh. Yeah, I feel like
post-vaccine.
I feel like now that we've given the government that power, this is kind of just going to be our new normal. There will always be some new disease or some new thing that's scary or some new reason we need to be protected from ourselves. So unfortunately, I tend to agree with you that it might not be this pandemic, but I feel like there's just going to be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So
masks are going to be in style for at least the next decade. But let me not, again, you said, let's not end it on a downer. I mean, it is what it is. At this point, all you can kind of do is live your truth and try to be respectful of others. Wear a mask. Come on, guys. It's not that hard. Don't wear one when there's no one around. No one's looking. Whatever. You don't have to be rote about it. But the thing is, I am looking forward to, and I think San Diego is a great place, but, taxes for me are a big issue nowadays, now that I realize how much you actually have to pay. But I think what I'm probably going to get into is probably not in San Diego. I may make San Diego like a kind of a second home for myself. As much as I really love LA, it's just, I'm not a fan of the air quality here and the constant fires. It's actually partially why I moved in October of last year. We had a raging fire in Pasadena. It was ashing, like in that movie Volcano with
I know who you're talking about.
Yes, that guy. And I was just like, I'm the fuck out of here. So I went down to San Diego, totally a different part of California. It's great and all, but I feel like I need and it's not going to be Idaho, but somewhere like where I can like start my own thing and be, if I'm still a loan officer, be able to take claim over the realtors in a not such competitive market. And it's not because I don't think that I would be able to. It's just that why would I try to compete in such a hectic city when I could just go and achieve the same result in a place that has never experienced someone like me? I feel like there's a lot of me's here, not necessarily exactly like me, but hustlers, where if you go to a place that's much more laid back, I might be able to have my own niche. So my goal is to become a multimillionaire in the next 4 years. It was 5 years a year ago. And I'm actually well on my way. And not that it's all about money, but money plays a huge role in the efficacy of your influence. And I want to, I tend to have, in many cases, good effects on people, not always. Just because, I'm a take it or leave it type of guy, but
we're all flawed, man. Don't worry about it.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to just continuing to save money, continuing to help people in their refinances and in their mortgages. But I think ultimately, I'm into like entrepreneurship, which is what I've always been into, and I just need more money to do it. But yeah, I'm excited because even though COVID may not end, it'll get better and people will be able to operate within the COVID sphere a little more sanely, happily. And there's a new normal, whether you like it or not. There's been a paradigm shift that we will never be able to control Z from. And you're either going to have to learn to live with it, or you can be affected by it. But I mean, that's just going to be a sad life for you. So I think there's going to be a lot of new businesses that are created and spawned off of this in industries. But long story short, I'm still not answering your question. I just am trying to focus on myself and make sure that I can provide and offer a valuable product or a series of products to people that I'm around, and hopefully make their lives better. I mean, I might come off as a little rough, but I'm actually like, I'll make you feel better 9 times out of 10 after you talk to me, or you'll just be bewildered at how crazy the conversation went and how many tangents I went on. But that's my superpower. So
love it, man.
I do.
Hey, dude, thanks for being here. We'll have you back in hopefully a few months when everything is wide open again, and we'll just go from there. We'll keep trucking along.
Love it.
Later.
Appreciate you, man.